I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Attawandaronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people. We are the beneficiaries of ancient agreements, such as the dish with one spoon between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, who agreed to share the abundance of the land through peace, friendship, and mutual respect. The two-row wampum, by which the Haudenosaunee welcomed the settlers and agreed to share the land in mutual respect, and the Treaty of Niagara, considered a fundamental document by First Nations in all future relations and treaties with the British. We recognize that we have a responsibility to be stewards of the land in cooperation and collaboration with the Indigenous peoples, not only for one generation, but for all generations to come. We understand that we have an obligation to learn the lessons of our history, educate ourselves about the experiences of the Indigenous people, and seek opportunities to heal the wounds that will result in reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. Many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people live and work in Fort Erie. We stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We have the good fortune to live in a land of such abundance, diversity, and beauty. Let us be vigilant protecting Turtle Island. Mr. Clerk, the roll call.
Your Worship, all members of Council are present.
I have but one announcement. There are two addendums this evening, two addenda. The first deals with an adjustment in a revision to the report PDS 52-2024. Second relates to the inclusion of a presentation by Kimberlyn Smith with respect to our heritage property designations. The third is the presentation to be made by Bev Bradnam, Manager of Strategic Initiatives, has now been attached to the agenda. And the latest change was the removal of PDS 46-2024, which has been removed from the agenda at the request of the developer so that there can be further discussions between it and the staff. The announcement that I have relates to the communication that I received from the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario announcing that Ashley Carter has successfully completed the association's Diploma in Municipal Administration. She's been inducted into MCTO's Academic Honor Roll, which recognizes academic high achievers in that diploma program. The Diploma in Municipal Administration is designed to provide an academic foundation specifically for the career development of Ontario's municipal professionals. And to graduate from this diploma program, Ashley has successfully completed municipal administration, municipal accounting and finance, municipal law, and employer law and human resources programs. Congratulations to Ashley, and I will provide this letter to you, Mr. Clerk, and you can perhaps provide that to Ms. Carter, and she can put that into her archives. Before we proceed further, we have an agenda that has a staff member at the very end, and prior to that, that's under corporate services. Prior to that, we have infrastructure services, which has no presentations or delegations. So I'm wondering if we could move up the corporate and community services portion of the agenda to in advance of infrastructure services. Is anyone objecting to that? By definition, is everybody supportive of that? Okay, so when we get to item 10, I'm going to supersede it with item 11, which is the corporate and community services portion of the agenda. That takes us then to disclosures of pecuniary interest. Are there any? Clerk, I'm going to declare pecuniary interest with respect to the report that deals with OMERS. I know that I'm definitely beyond that, and there would be a pecuniary aspect to that. And is that in the that's in the consent agenda. So I'm going to yeah, that's CAO 10-2024. So I'm going to declare a conflict with respect to that, and I'll ask Council to deal with that separately from the other reports. And And then I'll ask for someone to take the chair for that. Councillor Christensen?
Your worship, I should also declare a pecuniary interest.
Are we all over 71?
Not this guy.
You two aren't. You're not. You're not. So there's 4. I am. Councillor Christensen is just over 71.
Squeaked.
Councillor McDermott? You're 71 as well? Okay, so I'm doing it out of an abundance of caution. I mean, it definitely has a potential community interest impact. So Councillor Christensen, you're making the same claim. Councillor McDermott? The same? Okay, you've got that, Mr. Clerk? Okay, so when we get to that, I will ask Councillor Flagg if you would deal with that part of the consent agenda. You've got a long way to go, Councillor Dubanow.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good for you. Okay, if there are no other disclosures of pecuniary interest, there are no notices of upcoming public meetings, there are no public meetings this evening, so we have a consent agenda, and aside from item 8.3, can I have a mover for the consent agenda? Councillor Christensen. Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of those reports that are left in the consent agenda? I had a couple of questions with respect to the PDS 52, which is the first quarter report. And one of them had to do with the large discrepancy between the amount that we've collected for development charges and the amount the region has collected. And I asked Ms. Dawaria about that, and I wonder if you could respond to that, Ms. Dawaria. If you have your phone on, would you please put it on to vibrate mode? Yeah, that's nice tone, but please keep it quiet. Ms. Dawaria, with respect to the development charges.
Yes, Your Worship. So I checked with our chief building officials. The region's commercial and institutional rates are much higher than the town rates, and that's the reason they collect more. In addition, the town also has a CIP exemption for certain areas, and so that is reflective why the regional DC are significantly more than the town. In addition, the 409 Gorham Road, that was the major commercial development that town had issued building permit for. The applicant had received an exemption for about $72,000 because they got the DC credits for those that period as well, because the demolition happened and then they were given a 3-year extension to for the DCs. So that's the reason the town portion of the DC are much less than the regions.
And then just one other question. I note in looking at the data with respect to housing style, housing types, that we've got about 1,680 units that are classified as multiple out of 2,460 units. I think that's in the draft approved. So that means 2/3 are multiple units, which I believe are mostly townhouses. And in the active, that is the ones that are coming before us, about 76% are townhouses as opposed to singles or semis. We do have a target, do we not, with respect to the housing mix that we are trying to achieve in the municipality?
Your Worship, we are trying to convince the developer to provide a housing mix, but still the pendulum has swung more to the direction of the townhouses, but staff is trying to achieve that balance. And we are constantly working with the developers to achieve that housing mix.
Right, I appreciate that, and I can assure you that council is more than happy to be supportive of your efforts. Thank you. Any other questions out of those 2 items in the consent agenda? 3 items? If not, I'll call the question on that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Just on the same with the PDS 52 2024. That also talked about that I'm hoping it's this report, that our projected population is going to be, 51,000 or something in year 51, where our population is going to be a particular amount.
48,000.
48,000. But for the last years, and you see that we've had 300 new residential buildings now, how do they think we're going to get to that number unless the number of buildings increase substantially?
Mills de Waria. Can you comment on that?
Your worship, through you to the councillor, we tried, this is the data that has been obtained from the region based on their regional official plan. And this, we would keep evaluating based on the new permits that we are issuing, and we would be doing our own forecasting as well within the department, and that would be based on the number of building permits that are issued, and we can look into it if that projection is reflective of what region has projected.
Councillor Noyes?
And I'm trying to get my numbers straight here, but over the last 10 years, hasn't the population increased on a yearly basis by about 300? Or am I trying to find where I found it on here?
Well, I don't think that's accurate, but in any event, it's been accelerating, and that's, I think, what you need to take into
Okay.
account.
As long as we're keeping a track, I don't know if we're going to hit that target.
Okay, any other questions by anyone? If not, I'll call the question on those three reports. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Flagg, can I then hand the chair to you with respect to report CAO 10-2024?
Absolutely, Your Worship. CAO 1024, can I have a mover for that? Councillor Dubanow, thank you. CAO 1024 is on the floor for questions or comments. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Back to you.
Very efficient, Councillor Flagg.
We try to be.
Okay, that takes us to Planning and Development Services, Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services Subcommittee meeting is now in session. We have a presentation from Samantha Young, Intermediate Development Planner with respect to 0-14166 Hendershot Drive, draft plan of subdivision. Ms. Young?
The existing built form includes predominantly low-density residential of 1 to 2 story single detached dwellings. There is the Stevensville Public School on the east end of Hendershot Drive, which, if you're following my mouse, it's this blue area here. There are some mixed uses and commercial uses on the west end along Stevensville Road, which is highlighted in purple here and following my mouse. And then there is also a memorial hall, library, and park, which is directly adjacent from the subject lands. Actually, sorry, my bad. There is another property in between the lands, but it is within close proximity, which is the green area here where my mouse is currently hovering over. There are 4 open space and parks within walking distance of less than 1 kilometer from the subject lands. There is the Stevensville Memory Park, which is north of East Main Street, and it is about 370 meters away. So again, following my mouse, it would be this green area right here, and then the subject lands are right here. There is also a community park known as Stevensville Mini Park, which is located 880 meters away, which is on West Main Street, and it is connected to the United Empire Loyalist Park. So this park here, Stevensville Mini Park, and then the larger park right behind it. There is also open space available to the public at the Stevensville Memorial Hall, which is about 550 meters away, given that they have to, there will be a proposed access that will connect from the property to East Main Street. So from that point, walking along that trail and along East Main and then onto this hall. And lastly, the Stevensville Secondary Plan also identifies lands south of Carver Street for parkland and future open space, which is right here. So. Okay. So now I'm actually going to go back. So here, the subject lands are designated medium-density residential, where residential development is intended. And then along the strip here, it is designated low-density residential, which is proposed, this strip here is proposed for emergency access. The medium-density residential designation is intended for multiple unit dwellings and accessory uses there too, which this does include townhouse dwelling built forms. Okay. The Stevensville Secondary Plan had anticipated for medium-density housing form on the subject lands when the secondary plan was approved in 2016. The secondary plan anticipates approximately 150 units to be developed in 2 to 3 low-rise story apartments in the medium-density areas immediately adjacent to the village core area. So to provide some explanation, I guess I keep going back and forth with the slides, but to provide some idea, this village core area would be considered the green, the purple areas here, and then the medium-density residential that is adjacent to that would then be the orange colors kind of directly backing onto those properties there. The remaining estimate of 50 units within the core shoulder areas are anticipated to be in the form of ground-based single and 2-story street or block townhouses. The density range for the medium-density residential area is anticipated to be between 17 units per hectare to 50 units per hectare. The proposed draft plan of subdivision meets the intent of the secondary plan, given that the subject lands is considered to be in the shoulder area as opposed to it being directly adjacent to the village core of the secondary plan. The plan will diversify the local housing options by introducing 29 story street townhouses into a neighborhood that is predominantly characterized by 1 to 2 story single detached homes currently. The proposed density is also within the target at 28.85 units per hectare, which supports the goal of increasing the housing supply that's within the secondary plan, and the development will bring new built form to the immediate area while meeting the housing needs. Further, the secondary plan anticipated for a conceptual road through lands that are currently privately owned. So now would be a good chance to go zoom in. So the dashed lines here are the conceptual roads for Hendershot Drive to be extended. So as it is currently privately owned, it limits the developability of the conceptual road. As such, the agent has proposed a turnaround circle at the end of Hendershot Drive to be deeded to the town, and should opportunity arise to extend Hendershot Drive in the future, as anticipated in the secondary plan, the town may close portions of the turnaround circle to the abutting landowners and sell or deed those portions to those owners, which then provides for the opportunity to then extend Hendershot Drive. And then, the subject lands are currently zoned residential multiple 1 with a site-specific provision in accordance with the town's zoning bylaw as amended. I do note that the staff report did not mention the site-specific provision, which is an error in the staff report. However, the RM1 zone and zoning review remains applicable and is correct within the staff report. The RM1 zone permits a mix of residential uses, including street townhouse dwellings, and the site-specific provision further allows single detached dwellings that follows the R2 zone provisions. So that is the exception there. Okay. So the draft plan of subdivision proposes the creation of blocks designated for street townhouse lots. The individual lots will be established through a future part lot control application. The RM1 zone requires street townhouse lots to achieve a minimum lot area of 200 square meters for interior lots and 270 square meters for corner lots. The RM1 zone also requires a minimum lot frontage of 6 meters for interior lots and 9 meters for corner lots. Based on the information provided in their draft plan of subdivision, the blocks can comply with the RM1 zone regulations with respect to lot area as well as lot frontage. A planning staff will undertake a detailed zoning review of the townhouse lots to confirm compliance with the zoning bylaw as part of the future part lot control application. Okay. So a public open house was held in the atrium of the town hall on April 23rd of 2024. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands were notified of the meeting via a notice mailed by staff on April 3rd of 2024. Town planning staff and the agent were in attendance. There were about 11 attendees to this meeting, and there were also written comments that were received by planning staff. So some of these concerns that were raised through email as well as at the meeting include traffic flow and the increased traffic flow and pedestrian safety. So just kind of briefly going through staff's comments, Hendershot Drive will be constructed to full urban standards with streetlights, curbs, and gutters. A 1.5 meter sidewalk will also be constructed on the south side of Hendershot Drive with a connection to sidewalks along East Main Street to the north, which will have the access from the emergency access route. And then a traffic impact study will also be requested as part of a condition of draft plan approval, to which will be reviewed by town staff and provide approvals before moving forward with the development. Town staff also, another concern includes existing drainage issues, and with the proposed development, it may further impact the existing drainage issues there. Town staff note that the Hill Estates subdivision located south of the subject lands had oversized the storm sewers, which is between, let me show you visually, which is between these two lots here. So there is already an existing pipe there, which can accommodate the flows from the proposed development. Our development engineering staff are satisfied that the local storm sewers can accommodate for the proposed development. Through these development applications, it is typical that detailed engineering review will occur as part of the conditions of approval for this development. So final approval will not be obtained unless the developer can demonstrate that surface drainage will be managed within the limits of the site and will not increase off-site stormwater flows. Okay. So residents also questioned whether there was sufficient capacity in the lagoons located within this area. With this, the lagoons are regulated and monitored by the Niagara Region. Regional staff have noted that the development site is within the Stevensville Sewage Pumping Station sewer shed. They have notified us that during dry weather flows, the station's capacity is sufficient to handle the current flows to the station. However, this sewer shed does experience significant infiltration and inflow, I&I, during wet weather events. This catchment area would benefit from an I&I reduction program to help potentially gain additional capacity in the system in order to allow for some development. The anticipated flows for the development is 1.2 liters per second, as they had indicated in their FSR. So to ensure that the proposed development does not increase the wet weather flows in the system, the region recommends that flow monitoring of the sanitary sewer be included in the agreement and reviewed prior to acceptance of the infrastructure. A condition has been included in the draft approval to address the region's comments. So as such, final approval of the subdivision will also not be obtained if the condition cannot be satisfied. And then there were some discussions with density and built form. However, that wasn't put it in this presentation slide incorrectly. I do think this was kind of addressed throughout the presentation, but I'm also happy to address any questions that may come after this presentation relating to density and built form. Another inquiry from the public was about fencing and whether easements will be available to access the rear yards for interior townhouse lots. So we did have a discussion with the agent on whether that's a possibility. However, with easements along the side and rear lot lines, it may cause issues for residents who want to construct fences all across, or to landscape their yard, or to locate sheds at the back of their yards. So it may cause some privacy issues and conflicts between neighbors. As such, the agent has indicated that it is not desirable at this moment for them to have multiple easement accesses for freehold townhouse units. So they will be provided with front and rear exterior doors to move their belongings from the front and rear yards. Okay. So those were some of the issues. In conclusion, planning staff recommends approval of the proposed draft plan of subdivision as it aligns with the town, the regional and provincial planning policies. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Are there questions? Councillor Noyes?
Councillor Christensen, thank you, Samantha, for your presentation. I'm going to go back to the secondary plan. Now, in the secondary plan, and I was part of it, is that this is another unfortunate situation where during the secondary plan, everyone, I think in attendance, including staff, thought this would be a perfect place for low-rise apartment buildings. And that would be an L-shape access from East Main to Hendershot. So there'd be 2 access points. Now, I know that we're no longer looking at 105, we're looking at 29 units. But this is another situation where the secondary plan planned for A and now we're getting B. And I think it's unfortunate because this is probably one of the few places in Stevensville that you could put in apartment buildings, and which is needed in Stevensville. So it's very unfortunate that we're not going ahead with, that the developer is not looking at apartment buildings, but looking at the townhouses instead. My other concern is that this is a problem that we're going to find out down the road.
So just on a point of order, this is for questioning the delegate.
Yeah, I'm going to ask her
reports.
about, I'm going to just ask her about the road. Now, the road in the secondary plan, it was a road. It wasn't an access road, it was a real road.
Sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
so what happened to
Councillor,
the,
what's the question?
so the question is, how does it go from being a road for cars and trucks to just an emergency thing in a plan? Like, how does that get approved when it's supposed to be a real road?
So I do want to, through your mayor to Councillor Noyes. So at this moment, it is proposed to have the turnaround, and it's, at this moment, with this land here being where part of that road will be constructed to East Main Street, it's currently privately owned, which kind of limits the current developer to obtain these lands and then continue with the construction of the road to East Main. So as a solution for them to still provide some sort of access to East Main Road, whether it's through active transportation for pedestrians to access or emergency access for any situations that may happen, they have gone through a consent application in 2022 to sever off part of the lands with the landowners who have agreed to go through this development process with them to then provide that secondary access. I do understand that you, at least from hearing you, it sounds like you would like to have a road constructed through, and that is a possibility with future development. It is encouraged still for that road to be constructed in the future if that's a possibility. It's a little bit hard to see right now, but with Block 9 here, there are some reserves. So in the future, if this private owner and this lot here would like to develop and to construct the Hendershot Drive road all the way to East Main, that's still a possibility. So it's not that the town has not encouraged for this to be extended. It's at this moment with the current potential for development on this site that they had provided a secondary solution to provide that access to East Main Road.
Thank you. Going back to the Block B, which is the emergency access road, do you know when that access road, because there used to be a house on that property. There was houses all along Main Street, so when did that change to become an access road? Like, I'm just trying to get over the ownership, how things kind of change. I know that what you're saying is about the property on the, I guess it would be the west side, is privately owned, but so was the property where the access road is now. That was privately owned. It was a residential.
So the agent has reached out, and the property owner has reached out to this private property owner who has agreed to go through the process of demolishing their house and reconstruct it in a smaller size, and to go through the consent process to sever off the 8 meters for the emergency access. The details of the agent reaching out to the private owners here, to my knowledge, they have reached out to the neighboring property to see if it's a possibility, but the details of the conversation I do not know at this moment. But I do know that they have reached out to this owner and they had agreed to go through the process in support of this development here. So they did come in for a consent application in 2022. And then they had followed through with demolishing their house, which made it a little bit smaller than what they had originally. I don't believe there were more than one house on that lot at the time.
No, there was probably just one house on that lot. I'll wait for the other questions when the report comes, but there is a house there now. It's a brand-new house.
Mm-hmm.
So just, they did not have to have a 3.5-meter side yard, which they
Councillor.
have now. I'll wait for the report.
Are there any other questions? Your worship?
Yeah, just, so with respect to this access, emergency access that we're talking about, according to the report, that's supposed to be paved, is that correct?
Through your mayor, yes. So it is emergency access that will also be asphalted, which will also serve as a pedestrian trail walkway.
And will there be any landscaping on the sides of the pavement?
It has been requested to provide a landscape plan to be reviewed and approved, yes.
And with respect to this easement that you were, the request by some of the residents for an easement to gain access to the back of their units, how do we don't know what these townhouse units are going to look like yet, do we?
Not at this moment, no.
So from what you've described, in order to avoid having an easement, there would have to be a clear path through from the front of the building to the rear of the building for anybody to move things like lawnmowers or what have you.
Through your mayor, this may be a question better suited for the agent, which unfortunately they're not available today, but the design may include something that will provide that pathway within the townhouse units, but I would not know the design details at this stage.
Okay, I'll have some comments with respect to that when we get to the report. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was we had the public open house. Did we have a public meeting with respect to this under the Planning Act?
With the Planning Act, that requirement has been removed for a public meeting for draft plan of subdivision applications. And a open house meeting is also not required. However, we have extended that opportunity to receive public comments for this.
And so if there's no, if I might chair, if there's no public meeting, there are limited rights of appeal by whoever.
Yes, that's correct.
So essentially, and that's legislation from the provincial government. And that was a recent change, Bill 23?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that streamlines the efforts of developers in order to build whatever they want, presumably? Is that your impression?
So it streamlines the planning process, but it doesn't remove the opportunity for public members to provide comments. They are still welcome to provide written comments, which will be taken into consideration in staff reports, as well as being showcased to the public as well as council to consider in the process of making the decision. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it is to allow for development, any sort of development to be presented, but unfortunately it does remove a public meeting process that allows for more public engagement, but to mitigate that, we have we have welcomed a open house to receive those comments.
If I might, just to get a real fine point on this, if we make a decision tonight that the developer doesn't agree with, the developer has the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal?
Yes, that's correct.
If we make a decision tonight that any of the residents don't like, do they have a right of appeal?
No, they do not. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions before I go to Councillor Noyes? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Just on what the mayor was talking about, public meetings, have we had any public meetings in the last, let's say, 6 months that we didn't have to have, that we called anyway?
Through your mayor to Councillor Noyes, off the top of my head, I'm not too sure. To my knowledge, at least with the applications that I have worked on, no, we have not.
Okay. And I know it's not legislated that we have to have a public meeting, but we can have a public meeting if we chose to do so.
Kindly, I'm going to defer that to Ms. Devaria.
Ms. Delhuria?
The Planning Act does not allow staff to have public meetings for a draft plan of condominium and subdivision. If council would require a public meeting, the owner of the property has a right to appeal that.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Young. I appreciate that. We do have a second presentation tonight, Ms. Kimberlyn Smith, who's the junior community planner, who's going to be making a presentation about the heritage property designations that are on the agenda. Ms. Smith?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the liaison to the Municipal Heritage Standing Committee, I'll be presenting their recommendation to designate 1447 Ridge Road North, 651 Ridge Road North, 241 Ridge Road North, and 367 Crescent Road. 1447 Ridge Road North is located along a rural stretch of street outside of the Ridgeway Commercial Core and north of the Ridgeway Battlefield National Historic Site. The property features a 2.5-story stone house with modest setbacks from the road. The specific attributes include its overall height and massing, the location built into the lime ridge along Ridge Road, the front gable roof, the symmetrical 3-bay facade and side elevations, and segmentally arched window openings with stone sills. The property was added to the register through report CDS 5311 on October 17, 2011. The report notes that the owner did have concerns about restrictions on partial demolitions. However, the report also indicates that these concerns were addressed. The owners at that time did not submit a formal objection under Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act. They did, however, communicate in 2023 that they were not interested in heritage designation. On July 18th, the report prepared by ARA was emailed to the owners, and they were also notified by registered mail about the Heritage Committee's recommendation for their property's designation and when that report would be presented to Council. Staff did not receive a response for this communication. 651 Ridge Road North is located on Ridge Road and features a 2-story frame Georgian building constructed between 1828 and 1851 as a hotel and a tavern. Notable attributes include the side gable roof, symmetrical 5-bay facade, and 2-bay side elevations, window openings, and the red brick chimney. This property was also included on the register through CDS 5311. The report indicates that concerns were raised with regard to restrictions. However, it also indicates that assurances were provided by email to the owners that being a non-designated site on the registry does not place restrictions on interior design and structural integrity. No formal objection was submitted to the town under the Ontario Heritage Act. In 2023, the property owners communicated to the town that they were interested in receiving more information and the report completed by ARA was provided on July 18th. They were also notified by registered mail that the Heritage Committee was recommending the designation of their property, and the presentation of the report would be scheduled for August 12th. 241 Ridge Road North is located in the core of historic Ridgeway on the west side of the road. The property features a former school building influenced by Italianate architecture, positioned with a modest setback from the road at the southern edge of the commercial core and surrounded by other buildings originally constructed as residences. 241 Ridge Road North is historically significant as one of Ridgeway's early public schools, and the heritage attributes of this property include the red brick building, symmetrical and balanced facade, cross-gable roof with overhanging eaves, arched window openings with stone sills, and the 4 recessed arched entryways. The owners provided their feedback in 2023 that indicated they were not interested in designating their property. The report from ARA was sent to the owners by email on July 18th, and they were informed by registered mail that the committee was recommending designation, and it would be presented on August 12th. No response has been received from the owners following this communication. 367 Crescent Road is located on the corner of Dominion Road and Crescent Road. The property features a 2-story brick vernacular house built with Italianate influences. The heritage attributes of this structure include its overall massing, red brick construction, cross-gable roof with gable ends and overhanging eaves, paired window openings with stone sills, and the arched door opening. The owners provided their feedback in 2023 that indicated they are interested in designating their property. The report from ARA was sent to the owners by email on July 30th, and they were informed by registered mail that the committee was recommending the designation. The town offers 2 incentive programs for owners of designated properties. The first program is the Heritage Tax Rebate Program, which offers a refund of up to 40% of the taxes imposed based on the assessed value of the property to a maximum assessed value of $500,000. The second program offered provides a grant of up to 50% of eligible costs to an upset limit of $10,000 for work performed to the identified heritage features and attributes of a designated property. If council recommends moving forward with designation, staff will prepare a notice of intent to designate for publication in the local newspaper and notify the property owner and the Ontario Heritage Trust. Property owners can appeal under the Ontario Heritage Act within a 30-day objection period after publication. If council moves forward, they must pass a bylaw within 120 days of the notice. After passing the bylaw, there is another 30-day period for objections to be filed with the municipality in the Ontario Land Tribunal. If no objections are received, a formal notice of passing will be issued and the bylaw will be registered on title. All property owners have been informed of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for your presentation. You mentioned assurances, and I'm not clear on what those assurances would be. You said you mentioned 2 different, and which particular properties would those assurances apply to?
Through the chair to Councillor Noyes, the assurances were provided to the owners of 241 Ridge Road North. They had concerns when this was initially, my mistake. They were provided to 651 Ridge Road North. These owners had raised concerns when this was initially placed on the register that I guess they had concerns about the restrictions for what they could do interior and maintaining their structural integrity and energy efficiency improvements. So they were provided assurances that being on the registry would not place any restrictions on any sort of modifications.
Okay, thank you. I guess we're going to be looking at each one of these reports. So were assurances given to any of the others?
Through the chair to Councillor Noyes, the only other assurances were given to 1447 Ridge Road North. The other 2 properties, 241 Ridge Road North and 367 Crescent, did not raise any concerns.
Did 1447 Ridge Road North comforted by the assurances?
It does not explicitly say, however, the report does indicate that the concerns were addressed and that there were no objections.
And that's not the information I've received, but I'll talk about that when the report comes. And I think the town actually got an email also, but anyway, I'll wait for the report to come.
Are there any further questions? Any further questions? Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to verify on slide 5, if you could.
Yes.
I'm just concerned that, so I believe do you have the wrong,
This one?
sorry, the one previous, I think. No, 2 down now. I went the wrong way. So I'm looking at 651 Ridge Road North, and it appears on mine that 641 is circled.
Sorry. Okay, this one?
Yep. I'm not sure whether that impacts anything, but it just appears as though you've outlined the...
Through the chair to Councillor Flagg, that is correct. That is an error. It should not be this one. It should be 651, this one here.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. That ends our presentations for the evening, and we will move on to the reports. The first report on the agenda is report number PDS 46-1. Oh, sorry. Pardon? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. What am I doing? Yes. Okay. Yes, the first report on the agenda has been removed and will be considered at a later date. So we're now going to report 9.2.2 on the agenda, PDS 50, 2024. May I ask for a mover? Councillor Lewis. Are there any questions or comments to the report? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Again, I think this is a missed opportunity again. I think with the secondary plan, they were hoping that this would be low-rise apartment buildings, which is desperately needed in Stevensville, and now we're looking at townhouses. And putting that to the side, I do understand that when the road was planned, it was going to be like from East Main to Hendershot was going to be clear, and they're also looking at approximately 150 units, which is considerably more than what they're looking at now, which is 29 units. So maybe the need for a complete road through isn't as dire as it needed to. But if this property gets flipped and we go back to the apartment building, then this is going to be a problem. I am concerned that down the road, though, that this emergency access is not going to help any of those people on Hendershot Drive if there's a problem on Hendershot Drive. There are now, I think, about 10 houses on Hendershot Drive, so it's not a huge issue. But when you add another 29 houses, if something happens on Hendershot Drive, that it gets blocked or the sewer backs up or there's major road work that has to be done, those people are going to be landlocked because they can't use the emergency access. I am glad there is an emergency access. And just a little bit of background, that house was demolished. The house was bought, I think, by the developer. And the intent, I think, at the time was that that's where the road was going to go. It didn't. He built another house over to the side, and he put I think it's 3.5 meter side yard, or maybe a 3 meter side yard, which he didn't have to do. I think if he would have left the side yard to what the requirement would have been, which was 1, we would have had almost 10 meters or 9 plus meters for a real road to be put in. And I guess my question is, we've had other subdivisions where the road into the subdivision is narrower than, let's say, a regular road. Is this at all a possibility in this circumstance?
Ms. Delwaria.
Madam Chair, to the councillor. So if I understand correctly, councillor is requesting that the the 6-meter road that the 8-meter road that the applicant is proposing would be a public road
Yes.
for a vehicular access, and is that the
Well,
question?
I guess through Councillor Christensen, have we not done this in other subdivisions where the road was quite narrow going in? That it was less than 8 meters?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, I don't think so that was the case. All the newer subdivisions that have been approved have a public road which is 20 meter. There have been instances about a condominium which we have a narrower road which is about 6 meters, but that's a private road. And especially when we are doing a newer subdivision, it would be in the best interest of the public that we have a road which would be to our standards, which is 20 meters. And that's why we are only having this as an emergency access, which can be accessed for an ambulance or a fire truck if the need be. It would be a pedestrian connection, but the main access would be through Hendershot.
Okay, and thank you for that explanation. I think that's the one I was remembering. I was pretty sure we did one with 6 meters not that long ago. Granted, that was called why can't we just call this one a private road? Yeah, basically. So why don't we just call it a private road and let traffic on it?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether it's Ms. Delwari or Mr. Walsh.
I'll take it, Madam Chair. It's not an ideal scenario by any means. It's, in this case, I think it's a little long. It'd be called a driveway, I think. It's best to let it serve as simply as noted, an emergency access. Our emergency services have, I assume there's a chain or a gate across there. They'll have the key to unlock it. In the event that Hendershot is blocked for a period of time and access is needed, it can serve as a driveway in that case. Otherwise, we have a few of these around town. They work fine as a private walkway.
Again, if I can continue, I still think we should seriously look at making it a private road. I think the condo that I think we're talking about in, I think it was Ridgeway, if I'm not mistaken, was longer than this. This road isn't going to be that long. It's just, but anyway, I'm sure we can hopefully think about that. The other thing, my concern is that this Hendershot Drive ends at the school on East Avenue, and the Stevensville Public School is right there. And I'm concerned about the increased traffic. That's why I would prefer them to have another access that's not right in front of the school, which is where this access, the only access will be, which is right in front of the school. I think it will just increase the traffic considerably. Again, we're only talking 29 townhouses, I understand that. We're not talking 105. So I do understand that. The other thing too is that I look at the road today, and actually Hendershot Road is a pretty good road. It's in good shape, and I understand if the developer, with all this development, screws up the road, he's got to fix it. Am I correct on that?
Ms. Delwari?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, if the Hendershot Road would be destroyed due to construction or any other way, that will be the developer's responsibility to fix it to the urban standards and to the town standards.
Okay, and can we make sure that we take pictures of the road as it is now? Because there's not a pothole on it. So I just want to make sure it's a good road, and we want to keep it a good road. If they screw it up with all the construction, I want to make sure they're responsible for repairing it. The other thing too is that can we make sure that the construction vehicles do not park on the existing Hendershot Road?
Ms. Delwari, can you speak to the conditions that are imposed?
Madam Chair, typically that would be a condition of the draft plan where the vehicle, how the road has to be maintained during construction. And as far as the parking is concerned, there would be provisions that would be taken as part of the construction plan, and where the construction vehicles would be parked and where the other vehicles would be parked during construction.
Okay, I would be interested in seeing that, because again, I don't think there's any sidewalks on that road, on the old Hendershot Drive part, but I really did not look. And is there any possibility at all of some kind of a pathway to the park at Memorial Hall? Like the splash pad and that, is there any possible easement or anything of?
Madam Chair, that through you to the councillor, I don't think so. That would be a possibility because there is another property between the Memorial Hall and the subject property, and we would have to speak with the property owner which owns 3639 East Main Street.
Well, can we speak to him?
We can try the option, but yeah, and we can definitely look into it.
Okay, thank you. In the sidewalks in the turnaround, the circle, the turnaround, are there going to be sidewalks around the entire turnaround?
It's my understanding, Madam Chair, that there would be a sidewalk on one side of the street.
But in a turnaround, how do you do that? What?
I would like to defer that question to Ms. Young, if she has that information. It's my understanding it would be on the north side of the Hendershot.
At this moment, with respect to sidewalks going around the turnaround, that would be more in the detailed design of it at that stage. So at this point, I do not know how it will go about, but it is proposed for the south side of Hendershot Drive to have it at the very minimum. And there are some sidewalks located at the very east side of Hendershot Drive right now, and it's on the south side, which is why it's anticipated that a future connection of the sidewalks will be made from the subdivision to those existing sidewalks. But yes, I do not know an answer for your question.
Again, I think because it's a turnaround, I don't think you can have a sidewalk that kind of ends in the middle of the circle. I think it has to go around the circle.
I can definitely speak with the agent to have further discussions on the design to see how the sidewalk will be constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Young. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you. I'll jump in here just on a few comments. I understand the concern with safety. I think, yeah, missed opportunity for where it could have been an apartment building, but I think the residents concerned with increased traffic would certainly be concerned with 120 units as opposed to the 28 or under 30. I'm glad to see the sidewalks because I think we're all on the same page when it comes to sidewalks and new subdivisions, especially when the developer is paying for it. But I just wanted to add, kind of further to Councillor Noyes' comment about flipping. I think it's probably a good time for us to exercise that option of a sunset clause on this piece of property. So I would be hopeful to see something around a 3-year or whatever else we've been tacking onto these things until we hear back from staff in terms of how do we do this in a more coordinated effort. But certainly happy to have any comments on that from staff with respect to the sunset clause option at this point.
Any comments, Councillor?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, the Planning Act allows 3 years for a subdivision, and province is currently working on reducing that timeline or providing a prescribed timelines for a subdivision, but we don't have that information from the province as of yet. So as of now, it's the 3 years which is required for a subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Warrior.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rory. Would it be at this point that we would make that amendment to possibly tack on the sunset clause, or would that be at a later date? Oh, okay, then that's great. And those are my only questions.
Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So as I understand it, the secondary plan anticipated that the property immediately behind or to the west of this property would constitute the roadway that would go out to East Main. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And that's the property, if one looks at Google Map, that's got a whole bunch of vehicles, at least on Google Map, which would suggest that the owner may not be interested in an easement because that could, I suppose, open up liability issues. Do we know if there are still lots of vehicles parked on that parcel?
Madam Chair, through you to His Worship, I haven't been on site, but yes, it's my understanding that the vehicles are still there.
And this proposal for an emergency access, the one that immediately comes to my mind is Royal Oaks, which is, the emergency access actually happens to be immediately north of 651 Ridge Road. And I know there's a gigantic maple tree on that parcel and the branch had to be, a large branch had to be removed. So it's not an ideal situation, but it does provide at least some access for pedestrians, and it does provide an emergency access. So I'm not thrilled about it. I agree with Councillor Noyes that ideally there'd be a road through here, but I don't. This may be second best. We also don't know when this development is going to proceed, if it proceeds at all, and so it may very well be that the parcel to the west may come into play between now and then. I had some questions with respect to, Madam Chair, with respect to the sidewalk. There is a sidewalk that runs 3 or 4 houses west of East Avenue, and then it stops. This development, if it proceeds, is going to be required to put in sidewalks. So my question is, would we be inclined to, at the time, if this development proceeds, would we be inclined to put in the sidewalks across the remaining, I think it's 6 properties to the east, so that we've got a connection by sidewalk from this development to East Avenue? I don't know whether staff can answer that, but it seems to me that would make sense.
Ms. Delwaria, do you, or Mr. Walsh have comment?
I'll try answering that question. Typically, it's not the requirement for the developer to install those sidewalks within the town's road, municipal road allowance, but if council wishes to put that condition in there, it's up to them. I had estimated that the cost of putting that sidewalk in between the Hendershot and where it's existing is about $42,000.
Okay, so that is something that we could request of the developer. And that would be a condition that we would put into the conditions of draft approval?
If council wishes, they can put those conditions, but typically it's not a requirement for a developer to put sidewalks within the town's road allowance.
I understand that, but I think in order for this to make sense, we would want to have that gap created. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we add a condition that requires the developer to complete the sidewalk from the development east towards the end of the existing sidewalk at its cost.
We need a second.
Not in committee.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm generally in favor of this because I think we should encourage sidewalk connections wherever we can. And hearing that amount there, it's not an outrageous amount of money that we're talking about here. I think it's easy, if you will, for a developer to pick up. My only question is, and perhaps we need to take a closer look at this, because I'm just looking at Hendershot right now using Google, and I see there's a rather large ditch, and I'm just wondering what impact the ditch would have on extending the sidewalk through. It looks like we'd be okay, maybe okay the rest of the way. I'm just concerned. I don't want it to snowball into something. I mean, we hear the amount now, and I just don't want to find us into a situation where then we end up having to pick up urbanization or curbs or anything like that because it wasn't agreed to. So I'm just wondering if perhaps Mr. Walsh or Ms. Delwaria maybe had a comment on what would make the most sense with regard to the sidewalk being extended.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Dubanow, I'm looking at Street View as well right now. Depending on where the property line is, you may be able to install it behind the ditch, but without actually going out and taking survey and knowing where the property line is, we may get into relocating the ditch to accommodate a sidewalk.
And if I may, Madam Chair, and again, this is what I was concerned about, because I think it's a good idea to do, I just don't want it to take on a life of its own. If we did get into that situation, what would we be looking at? What kind of contingency? Mr. Walsh, if you could be so bold off the top of your head.
In terms of dollars,
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands, I'm looking here. There may be hydro pole relocates, there may be hydrant relocations. It's truly hard to say right now.
and I think this is a good idea. That's just my concern here, is where we could go with this. I'm supportive of this. I don't want us to be on the hook for this until we have a wider plan to urbanize and deal with the road as a whole. I'm wondering if, no, but that doesn't, I'll leave it right now. I'm going to think over a little bit of stuff, see if there's other comments from council, but the hamster has to run on the wheel right now. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes, you had a comment?
I don't have Google Earth, I can't do those fancy things. What if the sidewalk was on the north side, not the south? Would that make any difference? Yeah, but I think the one side has a really deep ditch. I don't think the other side does.
Mr. Worry or Mr. Walsh?
Madam Chair, ideally, you'd want to continue with the existing sidewalk. So, I don't know, I'm loath to give firm answers right now without actually going out and taking a closer look.
So we have a motion on the floor with respect to the sidewalks, and some questions that we can't answer at the moment. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to burst the bubble on this, because I think it's a really good idea, and I would love to see that sidewalk constructed. And I am all for linkages and active transportation, and I'm just wondering if perhaps staff can answer this. Do we have any plan for urbanization at this point? It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's in a fairly decent condition, because I'm just wondering if, but with inflation, it doesn't make sense. I was going to ask about cash in lieu, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because by the time we construct that road, the value of the cash is not going to be worth what it is today. I'm concerned about this, but I don't want to burst the balloon either.
Your worship, Mayor has asked to speak, so.
Yeah, so there's going to be 29 new units here, and some of these units, maybe a number of them will have children, and those children will be walking to the school. I don't want them walking on the road part of the way and the sidewalk part of the way, and so I think we put this condition in. If the developer runs into some serious issues and staff can provide us with some advice at that time, then I think we can look at it then. We don't know, we don't know when this is going to proceed. We don't know whether the road might be reconstructed at the same time, and that would be a good time to do it. But if we don't put it in now, we can't get it in.
Okay, so are there any further comments on the motion? No? On the amendment? Okay, so I'll call the question.
On the amendment, correct?
On the amendment, yes, on the amendment. Okay, that passes.
I still have the floor.
Pardon?
I still have the floor. Do I still have the floor?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So the other thing that this report, and we've had some other reports that talk about, particularly in this area, that the region is concerned about the sewage capacity. And so one of the conditions here, and then there's another recent report that we've had where the developer has to engage the region in further discussions about whether they can proceed or not. I asked Ms. Dewari about how come in some areas we put on a hold, in some areas we don't put on a hold. This, I'm advised by Ms. Dewari that the region wants the town to take the initiative because we'd be responsible for the extraneous flows that are going into the sewage lines. But having said that, is there a distinction between this development, as an example, and the developments near Walden Boulevard, which a hold was put on because we had to make sure that the capacity was available and there wouldn't be basement flooding? And that's exactly what the region refers to when they talk about this report. So what is the distinction?
Ms. Delwaria?
Madam Chair, I can only speak about this property because we've got the comments from the region, and they have identified, yes, there is a concern with the Stevensville sewage station, pumping station, but it's more related to the wet weather flows, and the town is working on a reduction of I&I. If that happens, it would be, it can be mitigated. But yes, I agree, they are putting the whole onus on town staff to resolve that issue. But I would like to defer this question about what's the difference between the two areas to Mr. Walsh, because he has more expertise on the servicing matter as compared to me.
Mr. Walsh?
With respect to whether there's a hold or not, I really can't speak to the region's motives on that. I do know that our operations staff, we have access to the wet well monitors that measure the height of the sewage as storms occur. And when it reaches a critical level, we deploy forces that bypass pump the station, in essence increase the capacity of the pump station so the basements don't get flooded.
Your worship?
I'm not going to flog this horse because I'm want to move on to something else, and that is these easements. So we're going to have some blocks where there's going to be 5 or 6 townhouse units, and I haven't seen a townhouse yet where the garage is run from the front to the back. I don't believe. There may be some smaller units. There might be some in the Mars Homes development in Crystal Beach, as an example. They might run through. And barring that, people will, on the internal units, will not have access to their backyard if they need to do something there. So is this something that the developer has proposed, that these garages will have a straight through? Is this something that we should be including in conditions of approval to make sure that when it comes time, whether it's this current owner or some future owner, when it comes time to build these units, we've got the ability to say, no, you didn't want to do an easement, but you did say you were going to do run-throughs, so here's what you have to do. If we don't have it in a condition, there's nothing to compel them, is there?
Mr. Warrior?
Madam Chair, through you to the mayor. Usually that would be the access to the rear yard can be established through an easement, and typically our conditions, there is a blanket condition that talks about the easements, and so that can be included as part of that. But if council wishes that this needs to be added, we can add that as a specific condition. But like Ms. Young had said at the presentation, we had discussed this issue with the developer, and there were concerns about the fencing, because if it's a condominium, there is a private section which is under the common ownership. This is freehold. There is no area under the common ownership, and that may run into some fencing issues and landscaping issues, privacy issues. But if council wishes that this needs to be included, we can definitely look into that.
If I might, would the swales at the rear of these lots, would that not be a common element?
It would be, the swales in the rear yard would be considered as an easement. That would be in favor of the town. It's not a common element. That easement would be in favor of the town. But that, yes, that argument can be applied for the access arrangement as well.
So, Madam Chair, could we do a condition that says either there be easements or the ability of internal units to be able to access their rear yard through their unit? Is that a condition that we could put in? Then it's up to the developer to do what they want. Maybe this owner, maybe somebody else.
Mr. Warrior.
Yes, Madam Chair, we can include that as a condition.
Okay, so I'd like to amend the conditions of draft approval to include that type of provision.
So you're making,
I'm moving that.
okay? You got that, Mr.?
Sure. That the developer either provide easements for access to the rear of the property of internal townhouse units, or provide a pass-through from the front of the units to the rear so that they can get to their rear yards.
Are there any questions or comments about?
And we don't mean through their living room with the lawnmower.
We don't mean through their living space.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, just a bit of background on this, because I live in a fairly new neighborhood that has a mix of towns, semis, and singles, and we have 2 blocks that are basically, the garage does not go all the way to the back. So when the subdivision was put into place, there was actually easements put in that required all the fences to go in to have a gate, so that if one person, they can open the gate to get to their yard to move through the back. We do actually have 1 row of townhomes where they do go straight back, where the garage actually just forms a connection, and there's doors to their backyard. And if you're driving down Garrison Road, you can actually see the doors. They're on Kirby Street. And in those ones, they don't have the easement, so they can fence all the way to the back. So I think maybe going forward that as a matter of policy as we do this, there's more than one way to, crush an egg, if you will. And I wouldn't want to see us putting in place these easements and requiring that if they can get through the garage. So I think this is a good amendment. Because we're starting to see now they're using garages more often when more space is available, larger luxury units, stuff like that. So I'm very in favor of this, and I hope policy-wise we can maybe kind of tweak it a little to take that into
So
account.
you're speaking of options in the overall planning process?
Yeah, I think we need to maybe narrow that or kind of fix in on that. But I think this is a good amendment now, just so that we don't miss a boat.
So we'll call the amendment. All in favor? Carries. So are there any further questions? or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I don't want to monopolize. If there's others, I'm prepared to stand down for a bit.
Are there any other? No? Okay.
So in the report,
Oh, excuse me,
sorry,
Your
go
Worship.
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to continue on, Madam Chair, with respect to the sidewalks. If we have the pedestrian link going out to East Main, it would make sense to me that the sidewalks would join with the pedestrian link. We were talking about how far along the circle it would make sense to me that it would join all the way to the pedestrian link. My 3 cents.
You have that? Yes, okay. Your Worship,
Back to me.
yes. back to you.
So the page 6 of the report talks about the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and it says that planning staff will undertake a detailed zoning review of the townhouse lots to confirm compliance with the zoning bylaw as part of the future part lot control application. What does that actually mean?
So,
Madam Chair, through you to the Mayor, based on the information that was provided to staff, the current proposal complies with the zoning bylaw. But usually what happens when they are going through a part lot control and where the actual lot lines would be coming in, that would be the time when we would do a detailed analysis. But staff is pretty confident that they would comply with the zoning bylaw.
Right, which is an oddity for us. We don't usually have that. With respect to the draft conditions, condition 7 talks about the public road within this development. It's going to be 20-meter right-of-way cross-section standard. Should that not say full urban cross-section?
Mr. Warrior.
Does that need to be amended, or is that going to be done by staff?
Can it be done by staff?
Do you need an amendment, or is that something that,
It would be better if we can have an amendment.
then I
Yes.
move that we insert the words "full urban" in condition 7 before the words "cross-section"?
I'll call that amendment. All in favor? Carried.
And then finally, Madam Chair, there was a letter attached to the comments from the public, and it had a series of photographs that showed serious drainage problems. And I know that we have a policy with respect to this. Is there any relief that's going to be available for this particular property owner, whose property I believe is immediately to the east, on the north side of the road?
Mr. Walsh or Ms. Delwaria, but I think it's infrastructure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, can you
Yeah,
specify which property that
Yes,
is?
it's Appendix
There was-
5. It's Appendix 5, and it was a message from Tim Murphy, and it had some background commentary, and then a series of photographs showing the drainage, some of which he attributed to the construction of property, or a new house maybe behind him, which I think would be the property that Councillor Noyes was previously referencing. But the photographs show that there is a lot of water laying in his property, and it looks like to the west, which is where this development will take place.
Just opening up the appendix. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I dealt with an issue quite a few years ago. I'm going to say pre-COVID. We term everything in pre and post-COVID these days. It was pre-COVID, and as far as I recall, that drainage matter has been addressed. There was an issue adjacent to Mr. Murphy. The neighbor had constructed a pool, I believe, or blocked the rear yard swale, and the affecting property amended their grading plan such that Mr. Murphy's issues were addressed. Mr. Murphy does have grading issues on his own property. If I recall, his backyard is more or less bowl-shaped.
Is this something then, Madam Chair, that staff, I'm sure that when development takes place, this will be a topic of interest, but is this something that staff can maybe have contact with Mr. Murphy to see whether there's continuing problems?
Mr. Walsh, is
Yeah,
that?
we can, yeah,
Thank
Okay,
you.
for
thank
this
you,
development.
thank you.
Okay. Councillor Noyes.
In regards to that, did I not understand from when it was presented that the developer has to prove that all the water can be maintained on his property? That he's not going to create a drainage problem, he has to prove that?
Ms. Delwaria, is that correct?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, yes, that's correct. There would be conditions in the draft plan that would address that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, there being no questions, I will call the question as amended. So all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next, the next item on the agenda, next report is PDS 53-2024, the extension of the draft plan approval for Hershey Estates Subdivision 0-12054 Centralia Avenue North. Are there any, can I get a mover? Councillor Dubanow. So the report is on the floor for any questions, comments. Councillor Noyes.
I'm just looking at the developer's request for an extension, the letter that he sent on July 4th, 2024. And he's asking that the extension lapse on August, like in a year's time, but I think we're actually giving him more time. Like, why wouldn't we use this date, August 12th, 2025, instead of instead of what the recommendation in the report is, September something.
Ms. Delwaria?
Madam Chair, through you to the council, the developer was requesting a temporary extension for 3 months and then an actual extension for an year. And it's staff's understanding that if we were bringing a report to council, and especially in this project, no temporary extension were an option, that's the reason we are bringing a report to council for an extension for an year, or whatever council deems would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Your worship.
Yeah, I know that, so we recently dealt with a zoning amendment with respect to this property, and that zoning amendment, I understand, is going to be approved by bylaw end of August. And there's an appeal period, and that's all referred to in the report. I look at these as two separate issues, really. One is fulfilling a condition of draft approval by getting a rezoning. Okay, that's been done. And the second is getting an extension of the approval of the draft plan, which now goes back to 2000. So we're in 25th year, and next March, I think it is, will be 25 years. Mm-hmm. The report indicates that there were 33 conditions, I think 11 of which are still outstanding, and that the developer is now seriously working on fulfilling those conditions, and they're all itemized here. And some of them look like they're not all that difficult to meet, and makes one wonder why 25 years to get here. So I'm thinking that I don't really want to extend this another 13 months. I'm thinking that the end of April, so April 30th, 2025 makes more sense, because if this is all they've got to do, then I think they should get on with it. And I think that this council and previous councils and the council that Councillor Noyes and I and Councillor Lewis were on before were more than fair to the developer. I wouldn't take this strident a position, except this development is something that wouldn't even be considered now under the current rules. And so I think if this developer is now serious, good. So I'd like to move that we extend this draft approval to April the 30th, 2025.
Are there any discussion? Any questions? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm of a similar mindset. I'm not happy with how long this has gone on, and I think part of the reason we brought in the sunset on the zoning as well was to kind of, hopefully get this moving forward. I stood here and I talked to the developer right to their face, and I asked, is your intention to get this rolling? And they said, our intention is to get this rolling as soon as possible. And that's all I can say right now is just shrug. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just wondering, though, if I want to be fair, and I don't want to, I want to be fair. So if for whatever reason we come to April 2025, they've got until September to get this done. If they have made progress on the conditions, would we be inclined to say, yes, we'll give you the additional 6 months, just so that council has an opportunity to look this over, make sure progress is being made? I just don't want to think that we're not aligning the zoning with, I think you know where I'm trying to come with this. I just want to make sure there's alignment here, but at the same time, we need to encourage this guy to move forward. So I just want to find out if he needs one more extension after this to get him to the end. Are we inclined to do that, as much as it pains me to say that?
Your worship?
Yeah, so after 24 years, he's 2/3 of the way there. I think if in the next 9 months he makes inroads into that and actually shows that there's progress, then I think we consider it. Okay. I'm not suggesting, I'm not going to state that this is the end of it. That is the message, though, and unless there's some serious movement forward, I'm not inclined to extend it further. But I think we need to see So it's really up to the developer. If the developer is going to make inroads on any of this stuff, fine. If he runs into a difficulty with respect to the hydrological or the stormwater management, let's find out what they are. But, no, I'm wanting to get this either moving forward or ending it, one way or the other.
Are there any other questions or comments? No? Oh, and Councillor
I just want to make sure there's not a misunderstanding here, because I'm a definite no in regards to any further extensions, regardless of what the developer does. Either I agree with the mayor's deadline, and I don't want the developer to think, okay, there's wiggle room here, because in my mind, there is no wiggle room. I don't think this should be built in the first place, and I'm sure as heck not going to give them any more wiggle room.
So,
I'm more inclined in her direction, but.
so am I. Okay, so but this is the motion on the floor. Did you want to make a motion that way, Councillor Noyes, or?
I think it's included in the mayor's motion
Okay,
that there's
all right
not,
then.
there's not a caveat over here saying, however, if,
Okay.
there's no however if in this. Okay.
Okay, then, in that case, let's call the mayor's motion. All in favor? Carried. So, are there any other comments, questions, Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question with respect to Block 17, which is the, I guess, pedestrian emergency exit out of that cul-de-sac with the single entry. Do we need to do anything on this one like we did with the one that we just dealt with in Stevensville in terms of the width? Like, can someone maybe talk to me about Block 17 on this as it relates to what we just did on Henderson? Are we looking at the same type of thing?
Ms. Delwaria?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, yes, the block 17 would be the, again, the emergency access, just and a pedestrian linkage. The width of that block is about 6 meters, if I'm reading that right. And it's the same thing that would be that we are going for Hendershot as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other, Councillor Noyes?
Because this is the second time tonight that we're looking at an emergency exit as opposed to a road, and I'm hoping this has not become the trend, that the developers are basically saying, okay, we don't have to put another road in, we're just going to put in an emergency exit. I think whenever possible, there should be every effort made that it's a road, not a emergency exit.
Thank you. Yes, can you speak to that, Ms. Delwaria?
That's okay. I just want to add something else.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention, in the draft plan conditions, condition 30 talks about if this final approval is not given within 3 years of approval, no extension be granted. Just to make things clear, can we just make it to the date April, whatever that might be? So there is no ambiguity?
April 30th, 2025?
5, yes.
That's the date. That's what the amendment was.
Yes, that's,
And so we'll be changing that condition 30 on the draft plan then?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
sure.
yep, that's the date. Are there any
I thought we changed, sorry, I thought.
Madam
we
Chair,
changed the
just a
dates.
point of order, if I may. Is the condition 30, did we amend condition 30, or did we only just amend the report because I just want clarification?
You're correct. We amended the report, I believe. The clerk, yes, we did not amend condition 30 specifically.
And that's what Ms. Delore was asking about, was
Yes.
amending
That's
condition
correct.
30.
Yes.
Okay.
So do we need a motion then to amend condition 30, or?
Well, Madam Chair, this is the original, these are the original conditions of draft approval. That 3 years has been changed umpteen times between 2000 and now. So I don't know why we would need to change that. However, if the planner believes that that's appropriate, then we can amend that to specify that the final approval, if final approval is not given by April 30th, 2025, blah, blah, blah. So I'm happy to move that amendment of condition 30.
All in favor? Carried.
That was easy.
Are there any further questions I hesitate to ask? Okay. Shouldn't say that. Okay, then I will call the question on the recommendations of report PDS 53, 2024 as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we have the next report is PDS 54, 2024. This is a heritage property designation, 1447 Ridge Road North. Moved by Mayor Redekop. The report is on the table for discussion, comment, questions. Councillor Noyes.
You said that with such enthusiasm.
I'm trying to be very specific.
Anyway, I had an opportunity, the owner of this property called me this morning. I would imagine she may have called other people. She is not in favor of this, and she has made it very, she has made the committee very aware of this in 20 whatever, when it was first approached. She said they were interested in getting more information. When they read the more information, they were not interested. I think 2011. They were very specific in 2011. They were not interested. There is actually a letter, an email to the town dated the 20th of October 2023 saying they are not interested. Besides the assurances, I guess, that the town has said they are not going to, they do not want to do this. I think, and they will probably be appealing it. And if you looked at the ARA thing, there's a lot of no's that it does not meet a lot of the requirements. I think it's a lovely house, and I think I think it's really neat looking at. But again, I will never support a heritage designation on a property where the owner does not want it. They bought the house, and I think it does add extra requirements for them. She was concerned about the saleability. She's done some research. She's talked to real estate, saying that the number of houses, once they're heritage designated, the people who are interested goes down considerably, and so their ability to sell the house is limited. I'm not saying no one would be interested, but because there's not more interested parties, the value of their property, she thought, would also decrease. She's concerned about the cost to renovate, and that also the house, I understand, the material that would be required, et cetera, et cetera. She had a lot of concerns. She did express it to the town, and so I'm not going to support this, and I would question that the town, if a resident does not support this, and she does the appeal, it's about $20,000 each appeal for the town. So I would question whether we want to pursue this. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Your worship.
Well, we're in a conundrum. We've, as an objective in our strategic plan, we've determined that we want to protect not only our natural heritage, but we want to protect our architectural and cultural heritage. So that's one thing that we've decided we're going to do. If we were to take a similar approach, that we will only designate properties that the owners are supportive of, with our natural heritage, we have a lot of people doing what they want to do with their properties. And I know Councillor Noyes has reservations about the extent of the tree bylaw and some of its provisions. I get that. And I certainly respect property owners' rights. There are literally thousands and thousands of properties in Ontario that have been designated for heritage purposes. The province supports that, and they've got a lot of policies with respect to this. So I don't want to tell people what they can do with their property, although we do it all the time. I don't want to tell people what they can do when they're out and about the town, although we do that all the time. And I don't want to tell them how much money they have to give us in taxes every year, but we do that every year. And this is something that we've recognized the burden that property owners with heritage designated properties have, and we've taken steps to try to ameliorate that burden. I believe we're the only municipality in Niagara that has gone to the extents that we have. And so we're prepared to share that. We're not going to place the burden entirely on them. I think there's still a lot of misperceptions about what people can and can't do with a heritage designated property. There are lots of people that think that there's greater value in a heritage designated property. So I don't want to, and I also don't want to be spending a lot of money on lawyers at the Ontario Land Tribunal. But we either are supportive of designating heritage properties and protecting and preserving our architectural heritage, or we're not. I am supportive of that, and so I'm going to support each and every one of these reports and hope that we can rely upon staff to continue to have dialogue with the property owners, to try to bring them along, provide them with assurances where they've got concerns, and if we have to go to the OLT periodically, then I guess we're going to have to do that. And we may learn some lessons there. We may find out when we get to the OLT that, you know what, the OLT isn't all that interested in heritage designations, and maybe we're going to lose at the OLT. On the other hand, and which I believe is more likely, the OLT is going to say, if you've got a sound case for designating these properties and you've followed the process, then we're going to support that. So I'm hoping that's what will happen. As I said, I'm going to support all of this. I recognize Councillor Noyes' concerns, and I recognize the concerns of property owners, but we're either going to protect our architectural heritage or we're not, and I want to protect it.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And through you, I'm of a similar mindset to His Worship. I struggle with this, and it goes right back to a property that we designated on Ridge Road, and I think I was the deciding vote in a split vote on it. And ultimately, I think it's fair to say that the municipality, we have our strategic objectives. We're trying to preserve the built heritage just as much as natural heritage. In my opinion, I don't think built heritage gets the recognition it deserves. Everyone wants to preserve the trees and the forests. We all want to do that. But ever since there was the threat of taking down the Lister block in Hamilton, I've had a very keen interest in this, and I've looked at all the architecture they've lost over the years, and this has become very important to me. Because as our municipality changes, and as we grow, and we were talking earlier tonight about, potentially 50,000 people living in Fort Erie, the way we maintain our sense of character and where we came from is by preserving these little bits and pieces when we can. And we've already lost so much that, I even think we need to start getting built, little, notices in the things we have lost, just to keep us connected to where we came from. Because if you forget your history and you forget where you came from, you end up repeating the same mistakes over again, as the world is finding out. Now, having said that, I completely understand residents' concerns and not wanting to do this. And that's fair. We are not the final approval body on this. So if we do approve this report tonight, my understanding is that the owner has the right to file a notice of objection with council where they can lay out all the reasons why they don't want designation to proceed to bylaw, which is fair. Perhaps when we get that, there may be some good reasons for us to reconsider. Maybe there isn't, but we'll have that opportunity. And then if council still does make the decision to proceed with designation, they still have the opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we're not the final say here on this. So having said that, and knowing that there are appeal rights and we're not the final say, I am going to support this because I believe it's important for us as a community to preserve this heritage as much as we can as our community changes. And I totally understand anyone who wants to appeal, notice objection. That's fair, that's part of the process. we'll consider it, we'll look at it, and we're not the final avenue here. I said the same thing with that Ridge Road property back during my first term of council, and I'm saying the same thing now. So I will be supporting this, but I will be giving careful consideration to any notice of objection or appeal that comes in and how we move forward. I think that's very fair for us to do. Thank you.
Are there any further comments? Councillor Dubanow. Or, no, sorry, Councillor McDermott.
I don't agree with Councillor Noyes very often, but this might be the day. I totally agree with what we're trying to do here, but, you know, sometimes circumstances change in families as to how much wealth you have in your house. You might have like this house here must be perfectly taken care of, but if we do something here to disrupt, and I think we would, but people that don't want this, it could be, there's a million reasons. There's a million reasons why. And some of them you might not ever learn because they're personal. And I don't want to get into the bedrooms or the living rooms of people or their finances. Everybody would have their reason for not wanting to do it. So I don't want to put a position who might put a person in a position where, you know, it's going to disrupt their income, their bill paying, or anything like that. Because, you know, I don't know what their wherewithal is, but they have the reasons. So this one here, I probably won't support as much as I do support heritage. I don't believe that if we say no to one or two from time to time because of fairly good reasons, that we have to push people into it. I think if they're taking care of their house now, probably until the day they die, they will. And once that's sold, maybe somewhere down the line, they might be interested. But I'm not gonna vote when a citizen really doesn't want it. I don't want to spend the money at LPAT to fight it. And you know, a lot of things go to LPAT, and what people have to remember is it costs the town a lot of money. And you know, I can't support this one, and I probably won't support the one on the next page either. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Are there any others other than Councillor Noyes who want to comment? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. I want to make sure that people realize I'm not against heritage. And I'm sure everybody who buys these houses probably buys it because it's a lovely house and they like old houses. I'm wondering that in 2011, I think we had a list of umpteen properties or whatever. I wonder, none of these were like, we kind of didn't say, okay, you can't do this, you can't do this type thing. I wonder if all those properties from 2011, have any of them been torn down or destroyed or anything intentionally? I'm sorry? And how is that working out for us? Are we any further ahead? 477 is the one thing that even our own staff recommended that to be demolished because all the attributes are gone, basically. But I would say for the majority of them, the 2011, people like these houses. Just because they have a heritage designation or they don't have a heritage designation doesn't mean they're going to be torn down or destroyed or whatever. And again, I'm not in favor of forcing a designation on a house that you don't want, that the owners don't want. And I guess the other thing is that, have we kind of done a little bit of homework in regards to any houses in other municipalities that have gone to the OLT, or whatever it's called something else. But anyway, and what the outcome was. Like, I mean, are they pro-heritage? Are they not pro-heritage? Can we look at the reasons they said yay or they said nay to other appeals so that perhaps we can learn from them before we spend $20,000 on the property. I mean, every property is different, but if we can read some of the decisions already made in other areas of Ontario, we may have a better idea whether we will be successful or not. And I strongly suggest we do some homework before, and they may just say, nope, the municipality says it's designated, they may just go, that's fine. Then we know we have a better chance of success before we spend the 20,000. Thank you.
Before I ask that of staff, Councillor Dubanow's put up his hand, so.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I mean, to be fair, speaking of homework, we've had designations go to the OLT in our own municipality, and we have had settlements come out of this municipality. So we don't have to go to other municipalities to look at this. We have our own information here that we're working on. And, we've been here before. One of them I know was settled. It was just one particular issue that set the whole thing off motion. We resolved it, moved forward, it was designated, and I think the other one is still kind of working back and forth. But my comment to this is more, general in nature, and knowing the process and how this works. So we're just passing the report tonight, then it has to go out to notice before we post a bylaw that then has to be passed, and then that process starts. So I think it's 90 days or something along those lines after we pass the report before a bylaw comes forward. So I understand the concerns being raised here, and Councillor Noyes had mentioned kind of a list of items that the resident had shared and that they were concerned about. So this is my assurance and my word tonight. If residents can provide a substantial list of concerns that would negatively impact their property, or like Councillor McDermott said, things related that would affect them. And not anecdotal, but if they say the property value is going to go down, well then great. Have a realtor send us some information to substantiate that with proof. If insurance is an issue, then great. Have a letter from your insurance broker and attach it. They have the right to notify us of the objection. And I give my word tonight that if those concerns can be substantiated and it is significant hardship for the property owner, I will take that into account. And if it is going to hurt them, then we don't move forward. That's fair. But I'm not going to sit here and play, I understand some people just don't want to do it. But at the same time, some people don't want to mow their lawn. And we're fighting with that in the community as well. Just because you don't want something doesn't mean that the municipality doesn't have the right to look at it in a broader scheme. So that's fine. I'm going to support this tonight, but there is a notice of objection that all residents who are affected by this are entitled to. Substantiate those concerns, provide us with proof, not just anecdotal, what you heard or read on Facebook, but provide us with actual substantiated proof, and I will look at it, and if that hardship is substantiated, then you have my word, I will not support the bylaw. But I want proof. I just don't want to hear people say I don't want to do this, because I hear about people complaining all the time that they don't want to mow their lawn, and we ain't changing that rule either. So that's what I have to say tonight. And I just want that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any further comments? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? Carried. All those opposed? Carried. That motion is carried. We move to the next report, PDS 55, 2024, Heritage Property Designation 241 Ridge Road North. Your Worship, moved by His Worship. The report is on the floor for discussion, questions. Councillor Noyes.
This is another one I can't support because the property owner is not interested in the designation. Again, it's a nice old school. If you're interested in that, you'd probably want to maintain it anyway. Again, I'm not going to force a designation.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. This is one that I'm quite happy to see on the registry, and certainly happy to support.
Councillor Dubanow.
My understanding, just from going back and forth and having a bit of background on this, is that the owner is supportive of designation, but someone else who is periphery to the owner is not supportive. I have not heard anything to the contrary that the owner is not supportive. So I think we need to be very clear, just because members of the owner's family may not like it, does not mean that the owner doesn't have, perhaps I'm going a little too far here, but my understanding is the owner is supportive. So I'll be supporting this.
Your worship?
Ditto to what I said before.
Is there any clarification with respect to Councillor Dubanow's comments?
Madam
Mr.
Chair, I
Lloyd?
would like to defer that question to Ms. Smith.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
To my knowledge, I'm not sure of any other parties involved. The form indicates that they weren't interested in designation. However, I don't know if there's other parties involved that are actually interested.
Okay. Okay, so, again, are there any further questions, comments? Councillor Noyes?
Again, we don't have any information from Councillor Dubanow in regards to that it's not the owner. It says right here in the report that the property owner provided a response to the town that indicated they were not interested in heritage designations. I'm going to take the report as what the owner wants, as opposed to saying, well, he's being pressured or just somebody else is involved. He's the owner, he says no, I wouldn't force it.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. The next report is Heritage Property Designation. It's PDS 56-2024, Heritage Property Designation, 367 Crescent Road. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Lewis. The report's now on the floor for question, comment. Councillor Noyes.
I will support this because they're very interested in it.
Councillor Dubanow.
You don't support?
No, I actually wholeheartedly support this one, and I actually want to thank the residents of this property because they have been very active working with the committee to provide us with information, assisting the committee with, the history of the property and other things. This is a good example. Councillor Noyes, I wish all designations were like this because this is an example of someone who absolutely cherishes the history of this property and wants to embrace it. And I'm getting excited talking about it because this is something going during my earlier times on the committee. It's been something that we've been talking about and we wanted to designate for so long. I just wish you were all like this, open arms, giving us like even pamphlets and documents they have in the house from the time when the Crafts lived there. It's just, this is an amazing property. So much history, not just in the architecture of the property, but even the story surrounding it. So I'm hoping this one will be unanimous. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions or comments? No? Then I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. The next is PDS 57-2024, Heritage Property Designation, 651 Ridge Road North. Can I get a mover, Your Worship? And the report is on the floor for discussion, questions, comments. Councillor Noyes.
Have we gotten an answer from the owners, whether they're interested or not interested? I know they were interested in information I guess early in 2023. They were interested in getting information regarding it, but it doesn't seem that there's been any indication one way or the other whether they want to do it or they don't do it. And I was just wondering, we talked about this the last Heritage, another council meeting where we said, okay, it shouldn't just be a letter. We should work really, really hard at getting consensus. And I'm just wondering, beside a letter being sent, has there been any other contact, like telephone calls, knocking on their door, saying, hey?
Ms. Smith?
Through the chair to Councillor Noyes, these property owners were provided with the registered letter as well as email. We've done telephone calls where phone numbers are provided, but on the forms, they are not provided in every case. I have not received a response from these owners from the communication.
And I can appreciate that, but again, I'm not sure. I would assume that these people probably are interested because they were interested in 2023 in the information. But again, I'm not going to support something. I think we can actually knock on these doors. We're spending, what, $8,000 per report to decide if they're designated or not, if they're heritage or not. I think we could make sure that somebody knocks on that door and talks to the owner.
Do you have anything further, Ms. Smith?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any further comments, questions? All right, then I will call the question. All in favor? All those opposed? Carried. The next, PDS 58-2024, 304 Ridge Road North, consideration of objection to notice of intention to designate. Councillor Lewis moves. The report is on the floor for Councillor Noyes.
Okay, going back to Councillor Dubanow's comments in regards to, okay, this is the first step, they said no. Do they, have they provided, excuse me, have they provided a lot of information? Or are we looking for more information? How has the discussion gone with them?
Ms. Smith, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Noyes, myself and our manager of community planning did have a meeting with this property owner and his partner. His major concern at that time was the interior features, which we did remove. However, when he came in with the objection, he had more concerns about development in the rear of the property. I did speak to him on the phone this morning, and I just explained to him that even in the event that this is a designated property, he still needs to go through the appropriate channels, appropriate planning channels for constructing the rear of the property. And at this time, we can't really make a comment on whether or not that's attainable because we don't have any set plans. I've also let him know that the only difference is if it is designated, he would need a heritage impact assessment for that development.
And what does a heritage impact assessment cost? And who pays for it?
Through the chair. So that is a cost borne to the applicant, and we estimate it could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000.
And I'm just wondering, since it came up earlier, if I can continue, Councillor Christensen, I agree with Councillor Dubanow in regards to these individuals. If they have a problem, that they should be encouraged to come to council, show evidence how this is going to affect them personally, as opposed to just automatically reaffirming our decision. I think we need to perhaps reach out to these people and say, okay, give us specifics. Is it because of the cost? Maybe it's because it's going to cost them $5,000 to $10,000 if they want to, for the heritage impact study, and perhaps delay for 2 years. I don't know how long it takes to do an impact study. But again, if they have good reasons, they're designated, and they can come forward. Now they're going to have Councillor Dubanow's support too, that they can show forward, okay, this is why I don't want to do it. These are the facts, these are the figures, that they should come to council before we just automatically reaffirm our position.
Your Worship, you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't have any questions of Ms. Smith.
Ms. Smith, yes.
So this is a stage in the process, and it sounds like there's been some dialogue, sounds like there may need to be further dialogue. This hasn't gotten us to the OLT yet, and it doesn't seem to be necessarily heading in that direction. I don't know what, if there's nothing on the inside that we're not going to be designating as a feature, I don't know how that would affect what kind of tenant can live in the property. In terms of, it's anecdotal about, I've heard from realtors, would limit the number of prospective buyers. Okay, I don't know that. referring to 477 Ridge Road as being on the market for 190 days, it's not supposed to be on the market at all. And so that's I can imagine why no one is going to be leaping in to buy it, and if they did, if they did any research, they would know that the town has some restrictions with respect to this property. So I don't know that I'd be relying on these things. If there are issues about construction at the back, there's all kinds of heritage buildings that have had construction added to them. There's, City of Toronto is a perfect example of all kinds of old buildings where the facade has been protected. In this particular case, I'm sure that until we know what the plans are, staff really can't comment on what it is they would do. One thing I would say, if our grant program doesn't include heritage impact studies, then perhaps we should amend that to include the heritage impact studies, so that if there's a property that's been designated and the owner wants to make some changes and they're going to be put to that expense, we can maybe contribute to that cost. And so maybe that's a notice of motion I'll give next regular council meeting.
I was about to suggest that, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's something, maybe that's a direction that staff can take up and can provide us with some advice on that. I don't think it's included in what we will reimburse, but I think it should be. So I'm going to support this because I think there's a number of steps still to go, and I want to keep this process moving.
Councillor Noyes.
I'm going to make a motion that we defer this until the next council committee meeting for the purpose of getting specific reasons why the owner does not want to designate with proof, as Councillor Dubanow said. I mean, I think that's fair. I have not heard anything other than the backyard. If that's the concern, it's only the thing, then so be it. But I would defer this until the next council and committee meeting, until, with a letter going to them saying, okay, you have to be specific. Is it the resale value? Is it the cost of your insurance? Is it the cost of renovations? Give us specifics, and we'll take it from there.
So we,
Point of order, Madam Chair, just on the procedure of how this works, and we have to pass this in order for a notice of objection to be filed with the residents. So if we do not pass this, all we're doing is delaying the inevitable. If we pass this tonight, they have 90 days to file a notice of objection before we prepare a designating bylaw. So what are we?
but this is consideration of the notice of objection.
And you know what? I realize right now, well, you know what? Every now and then, something gets the best of me, and I'm just going to take it right now. His worship's laughing at me, and that's fair, and that's fair.
You're laughing at me.
And that's fair, and I hope Councillor Noyes is laughing at me too, and I apologize. I got caught up. We had so many other designations here. I did not realize that this was a notice of objection. So, Councillor Noyes, if I've spoken too much, I withdraw the point of order and lesson learned.
So,
At least somebody else here is.
so we have a motion to defer this for further information. Are there comments, questions?
No,
no.
there's no debate.
Okay, so there is no.
Just to the date.
As to the date. So what date would we be considering?
I put forward the next council and committee.
The next, okay, the next council and committee. We have,
Only to the time.
there is something, apparently staff have some information we're trying to.
So, through the chair, I don't believe this can be deferred due to the timing. Even if council has the option to either withdraw it or pass it, but the bylaw still has to be passed within 120 days of the notice, and that would they give us enough time, it would end up being withdrawn, and we'd have to restart the process.
Chair, on a point of order, that would mean that this is out of order.
The motion to defer is out of order. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Good catch, Dan.
Okay, so I guess we're back to any further comments? Councillor Noyes, yeah?
So now, we heard earlier that the person would have an opportunity to come to council, and I guess this person probably did have an opportunity. But we really don't know why this individual, he did send us a letter, an email, and he talked about the back building and the rental and the tenant and everything else. But it's unfortunate. I think when we get someone who's objecting, we should then ask them specifically, okay, give us some concrete evidence on how this is going to impact you. And I don't think we do that. We give them assurances, it sounds like them, but the assurances we're giving them don't seem to convince them because they're still not happy with the designation. So I'm just going to encourage it in the future, if someone is objecting or is resisting, let's say, that the staff encourage them to come up with concrete, like do your research, talk to real estate, talk to your insurance, et cetera, and bring that information forward. Thank you.
Councillor Flagg, you?
Thank you, Chair. Do we have a date that we will be considering the bylaw for this property?
Ms. Dilworth?
Madam Chair, Ms. Smith would be able to answer that.
Through the chair to Councillor Flagg, it is currently scheduled for August 26th. It does not meet the next regular council after that. It would be past the timeline.
So, Councillor Dubanow?
And if I may, just to Councillor Noyes' point, that would give the owner some opportunity, I understand, to actually provide the concrete evidence, everything they need to actually substantiate it. Again, like I mentioned earlier, not anecdotal or, what I read or what I saw, but to actually outline how this would negatively affect their financial situation or anything else for council's consideration. Would that be correct? They've got, 2 weeks. Would that be something staff could include any correspondence or get it to council before that date?
Through the chair, yes, that would give them approximately 2 weeks.
All right, then I'll call the question, although, sorry.
Thank you. Through you. The 26th, is that greater than 90 days or less than 90 days from the time of notice of objection? Meaning, could it be into September if the bylaw wasn't presented on the 26th?
Through the chair to Councillor Flagg, it is greater than 90 days. I believe their deadline to pass the bylaw, I think it's around September 20th. It's right before council meeting.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, are there any further questions or comments? No? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Our next report is PDS 59-2024, the Brownfields Program application for 237 Niagara Boulevard. Could I get a mover, please? Councillor Dubanow. So the report is on the floor for discussion and questions. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be supporting this. I'm sure many individuals who have driven down the boulevard have seen how the property's been kind of cleared and graded off. I've had opportunity to speak with the owner of the property and some of the plans and the ideas they have. And it's kind of a sensitive area with some of the challenges that we have with the property, what's been used for before, some of the other potential issues that could come out. But just knowing what the owner had envisioned, and of course this may change, but I think it would be a benefit to the neighborhood, and I think it would enhance that whole area, that whole boulevard corridor. We're not talking, at least from what I was told, we're not talking super high, tall buildings, just very elegant, homes, balconies, terraces, stuff like that. So I'm supportive of this. I think we should do what we can to get things moving forward this way. So I'm very happy that this has come forward, and I'm glad we've got it for approval tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other comments? That being said, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. The next item is new business inquiries. Are there any items of new business or inquiries from council? No. The next item is the business status report. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the business status report? Okay, Your Worship, that concludes the planning and development services.
You've earned your keep tonight. Yes, very well
I'll pass
done.
the chair back to you.
Okay, so although the agenda says we go to infrastructure services, we are going to go to corporate services so that Ms. Bradnam can provide her presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and members of the public. I'm here tonight to provide you with a status update of Council's 2023-2026 strategic plan and to introduce the new public dashboard. So Council's strategic planning process included all of the processes outlined here on the screen, and the last two bullets are the important ones for this evening, that council members each chose a pillar to champion, and we've had meetings every 6 to 8 weeks with those champions, with key staff, and the mayor attended all of those as well. And we're going to continue those on a 2-month basis from here on out. And the reason for those champion meetings is to look at the council's initiatives and look at tasks and deliverables to move that plan forward. And I'm also going to talk a little bit tonight about the implementation of the dashboard. So for those not familiar with Council's key strategic pillars, we have 6 that we developed: sustainable, reliable access to local health care, the quality of life and community well-being, sustainable and managed growth, economic prosperity and diversification, environmental and climate change resiliency, and comprehensive housing options. So this is a snapshot of what our dashboard looks like now. And as you can see, we have the 6 key pillars, and then we developed the 27 key initiatives under those 6 pillars. Currently, we're at 36% completed of the key initiatives, 45% are on track, close to 8% are upcoming, and the 33% that have the status pending or the gray area are those that are going to be done later in the year or in 2025. So I'm going to just showcase each of these pillars and where we're at with the dashboard, and then I'll just talk about several of the accomplishments that are outlined in the appendix to the report. So under local health care, to date, we have had great success meeting with local primary health care providers, the serial mayor, and our community health care coordinator to discuss and problem solve and try to implement solutions to address community health care needs. We've updated the physician recruitment and attraction program, and council continues to invest in recruitment and retention. The mayor and CEO met with the Minister of Health earlier this year at Roma, and council members will be meeting with the ministry at AMO next week. Under quality of life and community well-being, you can see we've got about 11% of those initiatives completed. And of that, the most important one is our DEI policy was adopted by council. The council has also recently received the draft work plan. Staff were surveyed in order to develop training programs that will be undertaken. The DEI Coalition has undertaken a work plan led by consultant Maureen Brown, who I worked with in 2009 for the inclusion policy back then. And I understand from our CAO, Maureen will also be helping us develop training for staff. We've successfully promoted the Railway Museum's 50th anniversary event. Museum programs have been launched, including Mondays at the Museum, volunteer program, and the historical reading series at seniors' homes. Council also approved the position of the community coordinator in 2024's budget, and it's currently awaiting approval of the job description, rating, and reporting structure for the position. The draft Parks and Open Space Master Plan is being reviewed and will be coming to council in September, and the manager of Parks and Facilities is also undertaking a parks operational review that will be completed in the fall. For sustainable and managed growth, again, we're about 10% complete on some of these initiatives. The first draft of the official plan is being circulated now and targeted for completion at the end of October. There's an RFP soon to be issued to start work on the Fort Erie long-term servicing strategy. With respect to natural heritage, as you'll see under the environmental pillar as well, we have a stewardship plan that will be prepared for Waverly Beach and Shagbark, the additional lands that council purchased, once that official plan is in place. With respect to built heritage, we heard a lot about it tonight. 3 reports were presented to council on April 22nd. We also had an open house conducted on May 7th by staff to help educate residents about the program. An additional 5 reports were presented to council on July 8th. 4 were this evening, and there's a remaining 6 reports coming in September. With respect to transit, the on-demand ridership data was received for 2023, and a request has been made to the NRT for quarterly statistics related to Fort Erie ridership. We did receive a response that some of that data won't be coming out to us until the public is provided with the reporting as well, but we're keeping an eye on that. For economic prosperity, we've got a lot on track, just a little bit completed though. So mainly to do with the industrial land strategy. So at the end of 2023, we had 1.5 million in that reserve, and council continues to contribute 200,000 per year. Additional employment lands were added into the urban boundary, and the industrial land strategy will be revisited in the 2025 budget. So that was a big piece of the not completed yet, but still on track. We've had groundbreaking ceremonies. The new $10 million Ridgeway Center commercial development garnered extensive media coverage. 4 businesses were open in the past 6 weeks, and I know we have a couple this week as well. We've initiated the land sale RFP process for town-owned commercial lands, and EDTC staff have attended the GNCC, which is the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce Business Awards, where 4 Fort Erie businesses were nominated. Hotel Philco and Safari Niagara won awards for outstanding new business and excellence in tourism hospitality. And staff have met with Invest Ontario to discuss marketing and communications, site selection, lead generation and triage, and transactions structuring and Invest in Canada. What that means. EDTS has also applied for FedDev grant funding for the tourism strategy, and they were successful in securing that funding from the region. Once funding is in place, and the RFP will be released with the study completion approximately 12 months following the RFP issuance. Supporting tourism and cultural events, so we've had 38 community event applications received year-to-date in 2024. The stopgap program resulted in additional 10 businesses and organizations receiving ramps on Friday to make their buildings accessible. So that gives us 19 now in the community, which is great news. And I think a media release went out this afternoon as well on that. EDTS staff have also been working with the BIA on outdoor patio applications and placements of planters, benches, and cans along Jarvis Street. They've had 5 applications received to date. They've also secured filming on the TV series Cows Come Home in Ridgeway in September, which will be aired on Bell TV and possibly Paramount. And some next steps include exploring advertising opportunities at the Toronto International Film Festival, TIFF, and of course highlighted, we can't forget the solar eclipse, which put Fort Erie literally on the map. And we spent a lot of time and energy to make sure that that was a safe environment. We also showed community partnership and benefit when we distributed the solar eclipse glasses and encouraged the donation of food and personal products to our local food banks. EDTS staff have also established connections with the Fort Erie Multicultural Center and Strong Fort Erie Neighborhoods, exploring potential partnerships with Job Gym and EDTS for Job Fair. They also introduced the Fort Erie Multicultural Center to Job Gym and Sheridan at CCTT to discuss training opportunities, and also met with Sheridan at CCTT to discuss co-op placement and part-time employment opportunities for students, connecting them with local employers and organizations. EDTS staff have also participated in 2 Niagara Catholic District School Board skills trade nights, which were really well received. And to date, EDTS, as far as the last 4.6 balancing visitor accommodation, we've had 206 STR licenses with an additional 44 in process. Hotel Philco, which I mentioned earlier, has expanded to 13 rooms, and a database has been created for accommodation offerings in town. The appeal made to the Ontario Land Tribunal regarding the STR official plan and zoning bylaw amendments were denied by the OLT on July 15th. And for the last 4.7, pursuing and supporting post-secondary programming, the town's very fortunate to have FIA and Sheridan at CCTT develop and offer programs and education at the former Fest property. We had the Minister of Colleges and Universities, the Honorable Jill Dunlap, at the opening of Sheridan at CCTT, and we're hoping to meet with the Minister at AMO as well to discuss the implications of the federal legislation that's impacting foreign students. Sorry. Environmental and climate change resiliency. We've had about 15% completed here. We've got 30% on track, 15% upcoming, and some accomplishments under this key pillar. We've had the adoption of the tree preservation bylaw aimed at preventing the destruction or injury of trees. We had the tree giveaway event in May, which saw a total of 800 trees distributed, and participants again were asked and encouraged to contribute items for the local food bank at that event as well. The official plan review is incorporating the stewardship policies in the new OP, so those plans for Waverley and the newly purchased lands adjacent to Shagbark will be developed following the adoption of the OP. For natural heritage corridors, those will be captured in the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and staff, specifically our environmental planners, will be working with community groups such as the Burton Valley Nature Club and our Fort Erie Environmental Advisory Committee on signage and educational components. As council may recall, with respect to climate change, I did write the initial report in 2020, but since that time have turned the reins over to Michelle Moore, our asset management project manager, and most recently our environmental planners, the senior and junior planners. Policy and community planning staff have held an internal kickoff meeting regarding the plan, and grant opportunities are being reviewed. The natural asset inventory has been completed in partnership with the NPCA, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and that has also become part of the asset management plan framework. With respect to initiative number 5, the CAO's office has met with MP Badaway's office to begin discussions on shoreline protection solutions, and Chris has also met with ministers to begin discussions regarding possible pilot projects. With respect to drainage, there will be an outreach program for drainage issues, and engineering staff are providing a drainage work plan that will also describe drainage engineers' reports and the planned work in 2024. For comprehensive housing options, we're at 20% complete, 20% on track, and 60% of the status pending. And a lot of that has to do with the official plan report being completed, because then we'll look at the urban design guidelines, which will really have a big impact on this one as well. Council received the report regarding the definition of affordable housing, and the region has hosted 3 information sessions where local area municipalities were able to attend and raise questions and comments. As a result of these meetings, it was suggested that the region and local area municipalities develop a standardized agreement that affordable housing proponents would be required to enter into to secure the units as affordable for a period of not less than 25 years. A supplemental budget request was included in 2024 for a consultant to complete the affordable housing CIP, but I believe the town's most recent planning hire will be looking at developing this in-house. So that will be a cost savings, and I understand from Director DeLaurier that maybe that money will go then into the CIP fund. The Grants Oversight Committee, we met in March and June to review opportunities in 2024. And the policy framework that supports and incentivizes the development of a broader mix of affordable and attainable housing options will be part of that official plan update, as we have to be in compliance with the region's official plan targets. Government relations strategy will also include advocating around inclusionary zoning, and the CAO and several local area municipalities are also working together regarding the Building Faster Fund for meeting housing targets. For number 4 above, ensuring that the development charges bylaw and community benefit program can be used. We did complete that, and the community benefits bylaw was passed by council on August 28th, 2023. So the public dashboard, in the spring of 2024, a public dashboard was implemented that uses the data, visualizations, a scorecard, and progress updates to help tell the corporate strategic plan journey to all our stakeholders. The dashboard will help build trust and manage expectations as we communicate progress for each key pillar and initiative of the plan. The dashboard is a dynamic tool. It will showcase our achievements, and it reflects a high level and easy to understand language, at a high level and easy to understand language, the progress of the plan. The staff-led portion of the dashboard also provides us with the ability to capture detailed notes and reports for easy access. That part is not made public information. Some of those lower staff working details, but the overall summary is included and captured in the actual public dashboard. So this is what it's going to look like right now. Our website has the actual pillars, and if you click on it, you get the key initiatives. But once it goes into play on August 15th, we're targeting. We're still waiting for a few graphics from our communications staff to be included on there. So once we have that, it will be a little bit more dynamic. This is the page, and then this is the actual bottom portion of the page. And as you can see, all of the colors are coded here, as was reflected in those wheels on each of those. And the status indicators are here to explain to people what they are. So once they click into here, they'll get a list of the key initiatives. They'll get all the recent updates as they come out. And one thing that we did that hadn't been done before with this product is we actually put connections here. So if they're on this page and they say, oh, I wonder what the budget item is for that, they can click on the budget, they can click on our latest news, they can click on council agendas and minutes, or our Let's Talk 40-day page, or the actual website. So just in conclusion, council worked together early in the term to create the plan that would act as this guiding tool for council, staff, and the community when we consider the allocation of resources, both financial and human, and the development and implementation of policies, projects, and work plans. The introduction of a public dashboard adds another level of transparency and allows the community to follow our journey towards that community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions? Your Worship?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Ms. Bradnam for putting all this together and all the work that she's put into the strategic plan and establishing where we stand with it. I want to thank all the councillors for stepping forward and being the champion for each one of the pillars that's been allocated to you or that you've chosen to champion. But the question is, looking at, I guess it'd be the fourth slide in your presentation, which shows the plan status.
Mm-hmm.
How does one read the little circle or the dashboards that you've got? These numbers are based on your observations of the progress that's being made, I presume, on each one of the objectives outlined in the strategic goal. Is that correct?
That's correct. Let me just go, how do I get back here? So the Invisio dashboard builds into it key metrics, and we had, for each one of the key initiatives, we put some measurements in there. And once those are, and so you can do like an equal measurement if you have four key initiatives, or you can do a weighted one, so if the official plan is 50% and then, the consultations and everything after that, or maybe 20%. And so there are metrics in there that will be shown on the dashboard, what those metrics are and what is completed. And so the actual Invisio system then takes all of those check marks and your metrics to come up with where you're at. So if you go deeper into the plan, you'll see that 14% of completed are maybe one of 4 check boxes for each one. So each one is different depending on whether or not we had true measurements for it. And in some cases, the measurement might have just been complete the official plan or complete the DEI policy or set the urban design guidelines. So the urban design guidelines right now would have a big 0 beside it because we haven't done it yet. So that would be part of that gray piece because it hasn't been initiated yet.
Can I ask one other question? So just one other question. So near the very end, you've got the 6 strategic objectives or pillars on a page. And for economic prosperity, most of it is on track. Shows a small portion as status pending. None of it's been completed?
Well, it has been completed as far as EDTS staff have done a lot of things, but it's over the next 3 years, so they're all on track. The industrial land strategy hasn't completed yet, the tourism strategy hasn't been completed yet. So those are all big ones. The ones that have been completed are something that's like an ongoing thing, so there's no end date to it yet to say completed, because we're still tracking it over 2024, so some of the events and things like that, 2025, 2026.
Okay.
Does that answer your
Yes,
question?
yes.
Because it did seem like I had about 3 pages of EDTS notes, so it seemed like they've done a lot, and they have, but it's just the metrics that we have set for that, it hasn't met that.
That's all work in progress.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Patton.
Any other questions? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That will then bring us to CAO 11-2024. I'm looking for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, carried. New business inquiries. Business status report questions. Your worship, back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flagg. That takes us then to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get to do something finally. I'd like to now call Infrastructure Services Subcommittee in session. There are no presentations or delegations. We do have a number of reports tonight. The first being 10.2.1 IS 06-2024 traffic calming trail measures on Far Avenue. And I have a mover for this report, Your Worship. Any questions or comments from Council? Councillor Noyes?
I'm glad to see us moving forward. I also sit on the traffic coordinating committee, and we've had these discussions and that too at those meetings, and I'm glad to see things moving ahead. I'm just wanting when we're talking about this as a 24-month review, but that doesn't mean we're not going to do anything for 24 months, right?
I'll pass that over to the Director, Mr. Walsh.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could you clarify that?
Well, in the report, it talks about 24 months. I don't have it in front of me, but the referral is, it has it on all of them. Basically, we're going to review something in 24 months. I'm just
If I
trying
can
to find
jump
it.
in, I know there was some discussions about budget 2025 implications and not being into the budget process.
Here, obtain funding for 24-month trial measures as part of the 2025 budget. So in regards to that doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything. We're just going to basically be looking into it, right?
That is my understanding. Mr. Walsh?
I'm not sure. I don't understand the question quite. Here's how I see it. If funding is approved for the 25 budget, it will be installed in 2025 for a trial period of 24 months. in that, once in a while, we will be monitoring the effectiveness, and then in 24 months, come back to council with a report.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, or your worship?
Yeah, I like this report. I like what's being proposed, and I'm going to support this. This is an area that is quite tricky. It's a narrow road. It's got a sidewalk, fair enough, but it's also a path for a lot of children who are walking to school. So I like what's being proposed here, and when it gets to the budget, I'm going to support this as well. So thank you to staff for doing this. The other thing I would say is it's easy to support because it falls into line with our policy from the top right to the bottom, including the public engagement aspect of it. So presumably this is something that we've got good buy-in from the neighbors and some good recommendations from staff. So I'm very supportive.
Thank you, your worship, and I know the neighbors have been pushing for this for a long time. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Lewis. Yeah, this is for me, a very easy report. I walk by there all the time. It is one of the most dangerous roads for children. It looks safe until you actually are driving along with children or dog walkers on the sidewalk and look at the speed of traffic. It is also a place where we have had to install 2 crossing guards because of the danger of the intersection of Far and Ridge to children and other pedestrians. So it's an excellent outcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Walsh. I want to thank Mr. Walsh for putting all 3 of these reports together. I'll have more comments about the other 2 that are more in my neck of the woods that I've heard quite a lot about, but this kind of touches on all 3 of the reports, and I'm wondering if, as part of the trial, if we're going to be doing anything with regard to speed monitoring. And the reason I ask is to initiate this process, we went through, we obtained, the 85th percentile data and other related things. I'd be really curious, if at all possible, I know we have the speed limit reductions here, and I'm fine with that, but I'd be really curious to find out almost a before and after. If if we do some like targeted research, if we look into it, even if we forego, reducing the speed limit to see if the road design itself actually encourages a lower speed without signs up telling people, because I think this is a really good opportunity for us to showcase that there are ways that you can do this that actually do slow traffic down and aren't necessarily, punitive a month later when you find out. And I won't go too much into that, but I think we can all read between the lines what I'm talking about. So I'm just wondering if Mr. Walsh has some thoughts on that, just some comparative data or before and after.
Walsh always has thoughts, but do you care to share?
I hope I repeat myself here, is that we already have the before speeds. That was part of the initial study. As we go through this process, we'll do an intermediate speed study and a final, and that will all come back to council for information.
That's fantastic. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Your worship.
Yeah, Chair, there was one other thing that I thought about, and that was the unintended consequences of this exercise of calming traffic on certain streets. If I were a driver, and I am, and I was looking for a way to get from point A to point B faster than some other route, I would, as soon as this is all set up on Far Avenue, I would avoid Far Avenue. And I would go 1 street north. And that's a problem because the school is actually right on Highland. So what, I suppose part of the monitoring of activity on Far Avenue, as an example, will include traffic numbers, perchance?
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, I would assume so, Mr. Chair.
And if we find that the numbers are down, but we've got now traffic problems elsewhere. What would be a possible approach that we would take?
Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Chair, it all depends on magnitude. During our development of the policy, it was identified in there that one of the risks of slowing traffic down on one street is that traffic does move to another street. So go back to my original thought about magnitude. If the magnitude is small and unaffected, there was not an issue. If it does create an issue on Highland or one of the roads to the south, or anywhere else that we can identify, we'll look into measures at that time.
Your worship?
Yeah, so I do, I'll have some further comments on the other two reports. I am thinking that, maybe part measures might be more prudent in certain circumstances, but okay, I'm looking very much forward to seeing how this works out because, as I said, I'd be concerned about unintended consequences.
Any other questions from members of council? I thought you were going to mention that I beat you on my bicycle driving the other day when you were driving. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Moving us on to the next report, 10.2.2 IS 07 2024 Traffic Calming Measures Concession Road. Councillor Dubanow has moved it. Any questions or comments from Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I've had some opportunity to speak with other members of council, so I think they're going to raise some of the thoughts that I had, but I just wanted to comment on, regardless of how this moves tonight or how we, modify it or some, whatever the concerns are raised, this has been a concern that I've heard since 2018, and in particular, it's been 3 roads in Garrison Village. It's been Concession, King, and Albany. Now, His Worship touched on a very excellent point a moment ago about the concern about the impact it can have on neighboring roads. And I know King has been recently reconstructed, and I think the intersection at the end with where it is going to provide some natural calming just with the new layout and how it works there. But I just really want to emphasize to staff to monitor that, because King Street has already been on the radar of residents in the area who have had concerns. It has very similar challenges to Concession. I don't think it's going to be quite as bad now that the intersection has kind of been offset, so we're not going to have traffic going right through to get to Lakeshore the same way without that little jog. But just a few of the comments here. One, particularly item 4, I'm just looking at the map right now, the raised, kind of like the speed cushion with the pedestrian crossover. I think that's a great idea because we have Barron Road Park in behind and there's sidewalks on either side. So I think that kind of provides some connectivity there and gives an opportunity to make it easier to cross. The spacing between elements, I know number 5 is not a speed hump. It's very similar to what we see, I think Port Colborne has a number of these along the road that runs near the Lakeshore. It might be called Lakeshore Road in Port Colborne. And I found personally that they're very effective because even though your car can get through them very easily, when you're driving up to that, if you're, not already slowing down to go through it, you're going to think you're going to hit one of those obstacles there, even though you have no problem getting through. And it doesn't affect cyclist access on the sides as well. They can go through unimpeded. So I'll be curious to see how that works. But other than that, I'm happy with this. I know there's some other concerns. I'll leave that to other members of council. If they don't bring it up, I will. But this has been going on, something that I've heard since I first ran for council in 2018. I'm glad to see it. I think we need to look at King and Albany sooner rather than later, especially if we're going to Washington in the next report. I think Albany might need to have a look. But those are just my comments for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I just had an opportunity of going down Park Street because I've never actually been on a road where number 6 was actually done with the flexible delinear posts and things. And I'll tell you, it was really interesting going down Park Street. I would never go fast anyway, but you really wouldn't even think about going fast because of those. And I thought, gee, and they don't look like they're terribly expensive. I could be wrong, but they don't look like they're going to cost like tens of thousands of dollars, but they're very, very effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Anyone, Your Worship?
Yeah, so Concession Road is a major thoroughfare, and it has a lot of traffic. It's got a lot of feeder traffic. It's a collector road for sure, and it's a different status of, I would say, Washington, although Washington is very busy as well, according to the numbers. And this has been a constant complaint. I'm a little troubled by the fact that we have a process. We've gone through an elaborate process to adopt a policy, and the policy provides certain mechanisms for when we will consider implementing traffic calming measures. For whatever reason, the level of public engagement wasn't reached in this, and I find that A, curious, and B, troubling, because I would have thought that this would be a situation where most people would want to have some slowing down of the traffic. There's no doubt in my mind that any traffic calming measure on Concession Road between Albany and Garrison Road is going to shift traffic patterns. No doubt in my mind at all. And I know exactly where they're going to go. So this is going to increase the traffic on Helena Street, and it's going to increase the traffic on Arthur. I firmly believe, because those will continue to be through streets without any type of traffic calming. We don't control Helena Street. We control, that's the region. We control Arthur, but it's been recently improved a little bit. It's still a rough road, so I've got a concern about that. And I guess I would like to know, Chair, and Mr. Walsh can perhaps respond to this. When we've got a situation where we get a report, we get the traffic coordinating committee making a recommendation, there must be other data that they're looking at that we're not privy to here. So, A, is there that data? And then B, my second question is it necessary to implement all of these traffic calming measures at once, or are there some that we should be considering before we go further down that road? I like speed cushions because I think they do slow down traffic. And I'm advised that there's a distinction between speed cushions and speed bumps. Well, the speed cushion isn't going to slow everybody down. So I wonder if the director can respond to those concerns.
Mr. Walsh, to the 2 points from the mayor, any comments?
With respect to the latter, the difference between a speed bump and a speed cushion, a speed bump extends completely across the road. There is no opportunity for diverting around it. A speed cushion is a hump, multiple humps across the road where if you're a normal vehicle, a car, pickup truck, etc., at least one set of tires needs to be affected by the difference in grade. Your second set of tires would remain on the flat. It's sized so that larger trucks, delivery vehicles, etc., that typically don't speed, emergency vehicles, can straddle these without swerving or disturbing patients in the back of the vehicle, etc. As to the former question about the science behind this, when contemplating measures, we talked about it over on Far Road, traffic avoidance is fed into the model. There is a model behind this, our consultant has it, and it projects traffic on adjacent roads. I don't know what the numbers are, but when we do the evaluation, the model will spit out an answer if that's a problem or not, or if it's a problem.
Your worship.
So the very first item was the recommendation is being made to go forward with these traffic calming measures, despite the fact that the public engagement aspect criterion wasn't met. So that we've got all the reasons why we should do traffic calming, but we haven't got public input adequate for us ordinarily to act if we were to follow our policy. If we were to follow our policy, this wouldn't be here. So why is it that we're
Going
ignoring
forward.
that aspect? Not ignoring the aspect. We provided opportunities for public engagement. Public didn't want to get engaged. So why are we proceeding in any event?
Director Walsh?
Sorry, I didn't realize that was a question. I thought it was more of a comment.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
fair enough.
In this case, the Traffic Coordinating Committee discussed that point, I think at length. We recognized in both cases, Washington and, Washington and concession, that there wasn't the feedback that we had hoped for or set in our policies. As to why that is, I don't know. We find that quite a lot on public information centers and EAs. But regardless, the Traffic Coordinating Committee, because this is a new policy, concession had been identified as a trial case. I think Washington we had substituted in as a result of something that happened elsewhere in town. I can't recall the case right now. But regardless, the Traffic Coordinating Committee felt it was important enough to push the process forward, where we as the committee see that there is an issue with an opportunity for traffic calming, notwithstanding the public's disregard for the matter or non-interest in providing feedback. Going forward, we're going to look at the policy. Did we set the bar too high for public engagement to move forward? Or is it a case of the public truly doesn't care? And then maybe it's just a few people that beat the drum for traffic calming.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I think we do need to figure out how we're going to approach this, because we want to get public engagement. We want to know what the community thinks, and the reason we've set a threshold is because we don't want 2 or 3 neighbors saying we want this, that, and the other thing, and everybody else in the neighborhood says no, we don't want that. So we wanted to have the public engagement. It may be, Concession Road is an easy road. Everybody knows that people speed there, and we've all heard it many, many times. So that's a little easier in my mind than the next report, which I have a lot of problems with. So I think staff really needs to think about that as to whether we need to adjust the level of public engagement that we require to do these things, or whether we look at if it's a collector road, maybe it gets a different level of scrutiny by staff. But we've got to have some distinguishing factor, because otherwise this is going to create problems down the road when we get people saying, we wanted traffic calming and Traffic Coordinating Committee said no, and they said we didn't meet the public engagement criteria, but neither did they over on concession, or neither did they over on whatever. So I think we better make sure that we don't get caught on that trap. And I would appreciate it if we did, if staff did take a look at that.
I think those comments have been noted from staff. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I understand where the mayor is coming from, particularly on concession, but I think we've had a ton of public input. Maybe not on the survey, but I can remember Concession Road has come before us over and over and over and over, and I can keep going. I think at one point there was even a petition on Concession Road. So in regards to why they're not participating in the survey, it may be because they've been complaining about it for umpteen years and nothing has been done. And this is just another, okay, tell us again, and they're not going to tell us. But I do think this is a situation where build it and they will come, that we will hear more public engagement once these things are put in place. And many will be thinking it's the best thing since sliced bread. And there'll be others that think we've lost our minds. So it's going to happen, and it'll be interesting to see. But Concession Road is one road that I've heard over the years has been a major problem. And again, it's not, there's a lot of data that comes into this. Public engagement is one of about several other factors that we look at to see if it meets the criteria. So I'm not too worried about public input in this particular case, because I know we've had it over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I know in my ward, everybody wants a speed hump, a bump, and a stop sign, so. True. So no other questions from council? I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. And that moves us on to our last item dealing with traffic calming measures, which is 10.2.3 IS 08 2024 traffic calming measures on Washington Road. Any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
This is one road that, and I did bring this up at the traffic coordinating, where they're going to ask for you not to be able to turn left off of Dominion Road onto Washington. And I would suggest that we just not do that initially, because I think once you have the speed cushions on there, they're not going to, those people who are using this as a shortcut aren't going to be using it anymore. They're going to be going the way they should be going on the main, on the larger roads. And what we're going to end up doing is affecting the individuals who actually live on that road, that they can no longer make a left-hand turn to get onto Washington. So I would just say, I would just kind of put the no left-hand turn on hold for now, see if the other traffic calming measures solve the problem, and if they don't, then put the no left turn. Thank you.
And is that a comment or the director on that one?
It's a comment.
Okay. Your worship.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with Councillor Noyes, so tonight we agree on this point. So I'm going to move that we defer item 4 to be considered at a later date as staff may consider necessary. So that's kind of wide open.
Any questions to the timing of the amendment? Any questions to the timing?
Sorry,
Councillor Dubanow?
I'm talking about the left-hand turn. It's item 4 on page 3. Yeah. Okay. So staff can, my view is that staff can monitor it, and if they feel there's a need for them to bring it back to us, they'll bring it back. And if not, this can just kind of go along. Is that I guess I should ask staff, is that adequate direction?
Director Walsh?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I think I understand it. I think our course of action as staff will go back to our consultant on this, have them evaluate the non-installation of the left turn or the entry from Dominion Road. And I guess we'll come back with a memo to council on those thoughts, and from there we'll take it to budget.
Yeah, I think we're a little more, I'm a little more interested in this not being done until we've had a chance to see if this gets through the budget process. We've had a chance to see whether the speed cushions, the slow down pavement markings, and the reduction in speed have any impact. Because I think if you put a speed cushion 30 yards in from Dominion Road, cars are going to have to slow down. They'll have no choice unless they decide even if they veer into the other lane, they're going to be hitting a speed cushion. So I think that that's going to be adequate. So my thinking is that we get this implemented, and I think that's what Councillor Noyes is talking about, get it implemented, see how it works. Staff can then come back at some point and say, if they don't think it's working, tell us, and then we can reconsider number 4. Does that help staff now?
Director Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would still defer to our consultant on this. This is designed as a system, the hip bone's connected to the leg bone type thing. I'd prefer to get commentary, then come back to council. With the elimination of the directional restriction, I understand council's thoughts. There may be, as the mayor had noted earlier, unintended consequences. So I prefer to defer to the professionals for an opinion before council, in its infinite wisdom, says don't do this or do that.
Well, so then is it the request that the whole report be deferred?
Yes, table the report. We'll come back with a memo and put the report back on the table as amended if required.
Yeah, I haven't moved that, yeah.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm agreeable to deferring, but just with regard to the entrance access off Dominion there, just another thought that I had, and perhaps we can bring this up with the consultant, is if we are looking to do an access restriction, my personal thought is just knowing the area and knowing what the turn is like from Dominion Road to Helena to go north. There's a curve there, and the sight line is a little odd. And my thought is if you're going to go up to Washington, as long as you're driving slow through there and aren't whipping through there at 70 kilometers an hour, you know, if they're going to make the turn, fair enough. Some people might do it because they feel more comfortable doing it. So I'm just wondering if we send this report to the consultant to look at, I'm wondering if that turn can be looked at, how increased load at that intersection, making a left turn, can be sorted out. I just, I have very similar concerns about the do not enter. And if the consultant wants to look at it, then I hope they look at everything and not just because I think there are quite a few reasons why that might not be a good idea among what His Worship and Councillor Noyes said. So that was just my comment before we defer.
Anyone else before I go back to the mayor? Your worship?
So just to put a real sharp point on this, this is again another incident where the public engagement criteria has not been met, and we're going to go ahead and do something that I know is going to make the residents on Washington Street furious. There's absolutely no way that I would want to support a situation where people coming from the west are going to have to go over to Helena, up to Washington, Albany, and then back every time they decide they're going to go to Ridgeway or Crescent Hardware or whatever it's called now or whatever. I'm not going to do that, so I will not support this. The consultant, I may be getting a little opinionated in my old age, but I'm not prepared to put the residents through that, and I can't imagine that they'd be supportive of that. So, and then I'll move to defer the report to the next council and committee meeting.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Is the next council and committee meeting adequate? Because we've got to get it, if we want to deal with this at the budget time. Okay.
So the deferral's now on the table. All those in favor? Carried.
And just for,
Infinite wisdom of council has spoken.
and just for, yeah, well, and just for clarity, that would be the September the 9th meeting? Yeah. 16th?
16th?
It's the 9th. Okay.
We've arrived at the 9th. Okay. That concludes all of the reports. Are there any items of new business or inquiries? Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, a couple of things have come up this week that's kind of disturbing with regards to the specialized service that the regional bus people give us. Now, we've had some pretty serious stuff going on here, where we've had one person that's been left 5 times at the adult daycare up around where the economic development used to be. That's one thing. The second one that's come across is for this person that was trying to arrange an appointment for surgery and was having a devil of a time. They're both, all these people are immobile, by the way. They need the wheelchair, they need the special lift. So trying to arrange to get him to surgery on the 15th and get him home in the afternoon after he's recovered. Apparently that part's been fixed as of today. But this is pretty scary stuff. I mean, there's a lot to be said for what the transit is going to be like, but I just want to clarify with the mayor, if the powers to be on that board know what's going on here, because to be honest, there's a lot of things wrong with this. If we're going to get nailed with being underserviced with the transit itself, but this is like, I just can't picture putting my dad over there and having him not be able to get home. So I just wondered if the mayor can light a fire under there with good folk over there, that this is totally unacceptable. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but you know what? I mean, most of these people have tough enough time of their life being stuck in a wheelchair, not able to do anything without somebody's help. So life itself is stressful. And then you add the stress of trying to go from point A to go to a surgery, and we have to jump through all the hoops, and we have to wait to the very last minute to get it done. I know, I understand the regional councilor's angst, and I understand the mayor. The mayor knows all about the transit, and we're going to have more challenges with this, but this is the most challenging right now, and I was wondering if you could help me out on that.
Your worship.
Yeah, so Councillor McDermott, on August the 6th, I sent a lengthy email to the general manager of Niagara Transit with a copy to the chair of the Transit Commission, and itemized a number of things, including the commingling of specialized service and on-demand, and got some answers, and then was referred to the deputy general manager, customer experience, who is handling that particular aspect of this. So there have been a number of issues, and I want to be careful what I say publicly right now while I'm trying to work my way through this. I know that Councillor Encina had a couple of issues that he raised with Niagara Transit. There are a few aspects of the amalgamated service that I think a number of municipalities weren't necessarily aware of, and weren't necessarily aware of how some of these things were going to be interpreted. I've had conversations with, and I've been relying upon Jennifer Penelaggi, our staff person who's very familiar with this. She has a good understanding of transit. She has a good understanding of the numbers. We have by far the most on-demand riders. And part of that was because we had a conventional service before we went to on-demand, and it seemed to be working very well for us. And to be honest, I am disappointed in how this has rolled out. Some of that may have been simply because there were 11 different municipalities that provided service. There were 3 that provided conventional service at the time of amalgamation. We had gone to on-demand. There were others that were getting on-demand. Even the on-demand services that we provided were different than the other municipalities. That's turned into what I consider to be a serious equity issue in terms of who's getting what service when and when they can expect it. And part of the, it doesn't get any easier. If you're trying to create a regionalized transit system, I think you have to have at least an equitable system. Now, in fairness, it's going to take 3 or 4 years to get to the point where there can be homogenization with respect to level of service, with respect to hours of service, with respect to the fares that are paid. So we're working through these things. We're trying to work through these, and I will dare say that we're not the only municipality that has some issues with respect to this. So, Councillor, what I will do is I will send out to all of you the response that I got from Ms. Stout to my August the 6th email, and then I'll pass on to you what I find out from Ed Zara, who is the Deputy General Manager who's dealing with the commingled service. And then all we can do is try to find solutions that will better serve our residents. My big concern is that when they went to the commingled system, they saved $1 million, and that $1 million has gone into the general fund. I think it's going to be needed in propping up the specialized aspect of that commingled service. And I'm pretty confident that it's not just Fort Erie that's experiencing problems. That's no excuse, and it's no explanation, and it's cold comfort for those people who rely upon it. But, so there's some advocacy that we're going to have to be engaged in, and I'm on it as much as I can be, and I'm as frustrated, and I will be continuing to advocate for Fort Erie's residents.
Anything further, Councillor?
Well, thanks, Your Worship. You know, we look at budget talks coming up and some of the projected numbers. And transit, apparently, they're looking for another 6% increase as we go to the next budget. But when things like this happen, you know, the part that gets me the most is we get the smoke and mirrors deal when they come here and talk about how wonderful this is all going to be. And then we're looking at 6% increases every year with regards to transit, no matter what. Well, you know, let me put it this way. Services are going to be like it used to be, reliable. I kind of think this is we're going to get stuck with less equipment in Fort Erie. I just have this feeling just by the way it's going. But, you know, we can't accept that sort of stuff. We can't accept that in healthcare. We can't accept that in housing. We can't accept that in transit. We just can't, because we can't expect taxpayers to pay increase upon increase upon increase and not have something to show for it. You know, it's hard being a counselor. It's hard being here, because the decisions that they bring, the stuff they bring to us that we accept sometimes is like buying a pig in a poke, because it's normally, when we make deals with the region, it's not a winning proposition. And I'm not bad-mouthing them or anything. It just doesn't work out. I think we have to nail this one right at the get-go, because we can't accept anything less than anybody else is getting, which we will have to do, I am pretty certain. But the special service is where we really got to pull up our socks and be compassionate and helpful. And those people's lives are already disturbed by having to be in a chair, not able to do anything without somebody else helping us. And I know what I would feel like. I certainly know what I would feel like if I was sitting in a building 5 times and not get my ride. So I just ask that, you know, you try and instill some sense of compassion and humanity when we're making these decisions, because transit is very big with us. And it's bad enough, you know, Your Worship, that we're going to have, transit's going to be another issue when the hospital thing comes up, because they are not an alternative to us. So there's a lot of things good about transit, but it just doesn't seem right, and I had to bring it to your attention.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott, and thank you, Your Worship, for providing clarity on.
I think Councillor McDermott had a second point.
Do you have another point as well to bring up? No. Anything further from council? Seeing none, the business status report. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, always fun to drive, Your Worship, but always nice to sit in the passenger seat. So over to you.
Thanks very much. Okay, that takes us to scheduling of meetings. Any meetings anyone wishes to? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, Your Worship, I see here on the calendar that the Museum and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee has a meeting, looks like it's this Wednesday, so that'll be August 14th at 1 PM here at Town Hall in Conference Room 1.
Anyone else? Then if not, Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move that council and committee adjourn at 9:24 PM this evening.
All those in favor? Well, that was unanimous. Thank you very much.